members of the public to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that all members of the committee and select legislative staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through the Zoom electronic meeting platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listening and, if necessary, participate in the meeting by the Zoom platform or by telephone. All necessary access information has been made available in the House calendar and through the electronic calendar on the General Court website. The notice for this meeting complies with House rules and RSA 91A. Anyone who has a problem accessing the meeting should call 271-3600 or email hcs@ledge.state.nh.us. In the event the public is unable to access this meeting, the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance with each member states their presence. Please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Okay, Keith, you're on.
All right, calling the roll. Representative Hunt.
Yes, I am here all alone.
Representative Batusek.
I am here and I am home alone.
Representative Osborne. Representative Ammon here alone. Representative Abramson.
Oh my God.
Representative Ham.
Here alone.
Representative De Palma. Representative Greason.
Present and alone.
Representative Johnson.
Here and in the LOB alone.
President Terry.
Present and alone in the room.
Representative Bartlett.
I am here in my home in this room alone.
Representative Abel.
Present and no one else in the room.
Representative Herbert.
Present in this room, we have 3 people working on Wi-Fi. So I may get bumped off at any moment, but I'm here alone in this room.
Representative Van Houten.
Here alone.
Representative Fargo.
I'm here and I'm alone.
Representative Weston.
Here in my office alone.
Representative Bellew.
Here, home alone.
Representative Burrows.
I'm here. My husband is also here, but he's going to be leaving shortly.
And Representative McAleer.
Chris, where are you?
I see him, but it's on
He just came
mute.
on. He just got moved over. Might need a second.
Thank you, Pam.
I'm here alone, and I don't know why I've been on for 5 minutes and I'm just showing up now. I don't get it.
It's probably the wrong link. There's two different links.
This happens to me all the time. But
So we have 16 present, Mr. Chair. That's the roll.
Okay, great. We'll open up the public hearing on Senate Bill 35 and hear from the prime sponsor, Senator Kavanaugh. Good morning, Senator.
Chairman and committee members, thank you for having me. I hope everyone's been enjoying this beautiful weather this week. My name is Kevin Cavanaugh. I represent District 16, Senate District 16, the towns of Bow, Candia, Dunbarton, Hooksett, and Manchester wards 1, 2, and 12. And just here to introduce Senate Bill 35. In 1995, School Care was founded by 5 New Hampshire educational organizations. And the purpose of School Care was to provide school employees with access to more affordable healthcare options. When the Life and Health Insurance Risk Pool program was created by School Care, NEA New Hampshire was the only founding member excluded from participating in it. Therefore, this bill would allow NEA New Hampshire to participate in the existing risk pool program only after having gained approval from the governing board of the risk pool. Significantly, this bill is narrowly tailored to prevent any unintended expansion of who can participate in the risk pool programs that are covered under RSA 5-B. And we did work, it was last year, with the Secretary of State's office on this language to make sure it was very finely tuned. And it did go through the Senate Commerce in a 5-0 vote and was on the consent calendar in the Senate as well. And I can take any questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Yep. Representative Bartlett has a question.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair, and thanks for coming to see us, Senator Kavanaugh. I'm sorry, I missed when the School Care was organized.
In 1995.
95, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So this means like, for instance, teachers or AFT teachers are eligible, but the NEA teachers were not?
Correct. NEA is the only founding member organization that was excluded for whatever reason. They weren't included in it. So it would just be for that group to be added in. And it's got to be the governing body of the board still has to say yes to it. Just by passing this, it still gives them the authority to say yes or no.
Right. So I guess other than those two, what other teacher unions that are in this association?
You know, I'm not even sure. I'd have to probably defer that to, I think Brian Hawkins might be testifying maybe.
Yep. You see him? All right, great. Seeing no more questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to jump off. I have an ED&A meeting, but I wish
Okay.
I'd have a good meeting, a good seeing everyone. We'll
Thank
see you.
you.
Bye.
Thank you. And I'm going to promote Barry Glennon, who is the Secretary of State's Division of Securities, which I guess it is the Secretary of State that has oversight over risk pools. And I know that he's kind of delegated some of that activity to securities. Good morning, Barry.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Terrific. Thank you. My name is Barry Glennon with the New Hampshire Secretary of State's Office, Bureau of Securities Regulation, which we have regulatory oversight of risk pool programs. Just as Senator Kavanaugh indicated, the Bureau, we did meet with Senator Kavanaugh last year to discuss this. And as he indicated, this is really very narrowly tailored. And in order for a member to be able to participate in this pool, it does require the approval of the governing board. So there is some oversight there. And so in effect, we support SB 35 and encourage its passage. Any questions we have to answer?
So why did it require legislation to allow them? Why couldn't the board just vote to have more members?
I believe it was the language in 5B that did not actually include them, which is the reason why Senator Kavanaugh was asked to pursue an amendment to 5B.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Glennon? Seeing none, thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So now Brian Hawkins, who represents the NEA. Hi, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for having me. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, terrific. Mr. Chairman, members of the House Commerce Committee, for the record, my name is Brian Hawkins. I'm Zooming before you today, representing NEA New Hampshire. We represent over 17,000 members across New Hampshire in collective bargaining, and there are many of the amazing educators in public education today in our state. As Senator Kavanaugh explained, 26 years ago, school care was founded as the New Hampshire School Care Coalition, and by the way, I have some written testimony I will also submit to the committee and to the clerk. So
thank you.
Just to say that at the top. And so it was founded when the executive director of NEA New Hampshire at the time approached the School Boards Association and some of the other associations representing management in school districts to respond to what they felt was the need to have another choice when accessing healthcare for school employees, as well as to hopefully have some more affordable options for health insurance, something that would benefit school districts, employees, and taxpayers. So the partnership was founded by the Association of School Business Officials, the New Hampshire School Boards Association, NEA New Hampshire, the School Boards Insurance Trust, and the New Hampshire School Administrators Association. The goal and the premise of this coalition was to have a true labor management enterprise in seeking to provide, again, districts and other political subdivisions options that were a good fit for them for their healthcare. And over the last 25, 26 years, we feel the coalition has been a truly successful one, a collaborative one, and one that's worked well toward what it was intended to do. Again, that a labor management partnership. And today, the NEA New Hampshire president continues to sit on the board of school care, and we continue to have NEA New Hampshire continues to have a staff person dedicated to helping facilitate that process, especially for the labor side in helping our members with their health insurance needs. So now, of the founding members that I just mentioned, as Senator Kavanaugh said, there's only one of those organizations that cannot participate in the risk pool as an employer for their own employees, and that is NEA New Hampshire. And that's because of the way the 5B statute is currently written. So I think, just to clarify that this is because I think that Mr. Chairman, you asked a question of Senator Kavanaugh. So this is that NEA New Hampshire as an employer would be participating in the risk the risk pool.
So the teachers are already in. Teachers are already covered. You just want the management of NEA to be also be covered under this pool?
So actually this was the next point I was going to make in my testimony. Was actually so if you the way the statute is currently written, you were asking Mr. Glennon earlier. It's sort of a broad definition that includes any of the entities that were sort of created by some of the other town school districts. So for example, if you are the New Hampshire School Boards or School Administrators Association, they are included as an employer in the definition of who can participate in a 5B risk pool plan, which is why I was saying those other partners in founding school care and continuing to sit on the board of school care, they all are able to participate for as employers as well. So not just the school districts that they represent, but the School Boards Association, for example, as an employer can participate in the plan. Same thing goes for Health Trust with respect to the municipal association. So again, there's only one left out of that, and that simply has to do with the definition of the way the statute was written. So it wasn't necessarily specifically excluding us it's just the categories of who could be included. And so the bill seeks to correct this issue by allowing founding organizations of risk pool management programs to participate in specifically just the health and life insurances. So I'll point out in the bill, it specifically references just 5B3, Roman 3, F and G. So this does not include workers' compensation or anything else like that. It's just the health and life. So again, this legislation is really about acknowledging the integral role that a founding organization of a risk pool like NEA New Hampshire's played in the formation and success of school care by fixing this provision in the statute. As has been stated, it is narrowly tailored, and so we would have to receive authorization from the board, not the NEA New Hampshire board, but the board of school care, which has a fiduciary responsibility to the pool, in order to participate. And so throughout this process, I just want to thank the Secretary of State's office, Secretary Gardner, Mr. Glennon for their assistance, as well as the folks at school care for working with us on this, and to Senator Kavanaugh for bringing the bill forward. So I'll close my testimony there, and again, I will submit my written version of this to the committee for the record, and happy to take any questions.
Okay, so I still make sure I want to answer. So again, I'm using my example as the AFT, which is the other big teachers union.
Right.
So AFT wasn't barred because their representatives were actual teachers and therefore they were getting the benefits? Or that right out of the beginning, you know, it was how did, well, I guess first, is there AFT members in this risk pool?
I presume there are school districts who have, school employees represented by AFT that are in the risk pool.
Okay.
So it's not the it is not the actual educators, school staff that are excluded. So our members certainly are not excluded from if their employer joins the pool.
Okay, so that means, I guess what I think you're saying is that the NEA is so big that it has employees that are not actually teachers. And so you would like them to be able to join in this risk pool simply because they work for the NEA and they're not teachers, even though they're not teachers.
Yes, so we NEA New Hampshire would have to participate as an employer for their employees, but yes, I think that's right.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay.
And I just say, just as the other associations that are part of this plan can do right now. So
okay, so let's say some of the other ones you mentioned school boards.
Yeah.
So that means that anybody who's is a school board could get in on this policy, even though they're elected and only there for a couple of years?
No. So you would have to be, it would be an employee, or as an employee, the School Boards Association has, a small number of employees, I think. So as an employer, they can buy into school care for their employees.
So the
not
School Board
for
Association, which might have about 10 employees. I mean, I don't know how many they have.
right.
But
We also, yes, and that's exactly right. And so NEA New Hampshire is, we have less than 20 employees.
So who else is, so read that list again. Now I got to pay more attention.
Oh, sure. The member, and this will be in my, this is part of my testimony too, so you'll have it. The school business officials, the School Boards Association, us, the school boards, and the New Hampshire School Administrators Association. So that'd be like the superintendents, and but again, it's for their employees, not for the. So to cite the example you used, a member of a school board would not be eligible for this. It would only be the folks
employees who have a full-time job and working for these associations.
The associations, right? Exactly.
Holy moly. Okay. Well, I guess the awkwardness is that some of us think the NEA is and I know it's supposed to be advancement of teachers, but we think of it as a union. So what we're doing is we're taking the union office and we're saying we're going to treat you just like a teacher. So that's simply an interesting issue. Representative Abel has a question.
Sorry. Yes, thank you. As I understand this bill, tell me if I'm correct. While it would be necessary for the legislature to pass this bill and the governor to sign it in order to expand who's eligible to participate, there in no way does this affect taxpayers. That is, there's no cost to the taxpayer. Could you just address if that is correct?
That's absolutely correct. And I think there may be a representative in the audience, the virtual audience from School Care, if you wanted to hear from them as well. But we would obviously, like any other school district or other employer that was participating, would obviously have to pay the full costs of participating. So you're absolutely correct. There's no cost to the state or to the locality.
Representative Van Houten.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Hawkins, for being here. I'd just like to clarify something too. I think some of us are going in directions that may or may not be the right directions, and I'd like to just be 100% sure. First of all, we're talking about a small number of employees who probably should have been there in the first place and did not get residence in that pool. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. Yes.
And secondly, this is totally divorced from anything union related. This is simply a matter of doing the right thing by employees and offering them this kind of coverage. Is that correct as well?
That's correct. Again, this is correcting the only group that is making this a successful enterprise. The school is not able to participate. So
great. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay, any other questions from the committee? Great. So is anybody the attendees? Does anybody else would like to testify after hearing our discussion?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your time, and I'll get this written stuff over to you.
Thank you very much, man.
Okay.
So I don't have anybody else signed up for it, and I don't see any hands popping up who want to testify. So I guess we'll end the public hearing on Senate Bill 35, and we had 9 support and none opposed and nobody neutral. So with that, we'll close the public hearing on Senate Bill 35. All right. What's next? My sheet again. All right. Oh, after looking for that piece of paper now, I've lost. So what's the next one?
The next one is at 9:45 and it's Senate Bill 38.
Okay. All right, so that one. All right, well, I guess we're going to be in recess until 9:45.
I had 9:30 on my schedule.
Yeah, looking at the old one, you're right.
The calendar has 9:45.
Oh, all right.
Revised schedule, it came out.
Yeah, the revised schedule is 9:45, right?
Okay.
The what happened was there was some bills that didn't appear, so we had to work around it. Right, because I had 9:30, but that was okay. So okay, so we'll just in brief recess until if the calendar says 9. The key element's the calendar. So if the calendar says 9:45, then
right.
Yeah, it says 9:45 on the calendar.
Okay, so that's the rules we play by. Okay, you all in a couple minutes.
Wait.
You guys in the committee rooms, I guess what you have to do is turn off your volume on your computers because you've got the speaker in the room.
Right, I lowered mine as low as it will go. It won't shut off anymore. So I don't have my speaker on on my computer.
I think it's your microphone, right? So it's not speaker. I don't know. That's a good question.
Sounds like a cricket.
Yeah, it does.
Feels like late summer already.
Right. I think if you go to the bottom, well, in my screen, and you go to the speaker, you can actually turn it off by Xing it.
Right, or maybe the F1 key.
I got my tablet.
Tablet. Huh.
It's doing it as a phone.
Yeah.
So Max, is it doing to yours too? Are you having the same problem?
Let me go out and come back in and try that.
No, I have a laptop, so I can turn the volume all the way down.
Huh. So you have an iPad, Don, or is it a Kindle?
Tablet.
Tablet. Is that a Google device? What is a tablet? I'm not sure I know tablet. Is that HP or?
It's Android, so.
Yeah, it's an Android.
Right, so it's a Google some type of device. Yeah.
Samsung.
Samsung. Oh, okay, cool. Samsung.
Yeah, you should be able to turn it off.
They keep trying to get me to take buy one of those. But.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I did receive in the mail the printed bills that we're dealing with yesterday and today. Of course, it came yesterday afternoon. But one was missing and we don't have any for next week. So would it be your suggestion that I go to the clerk's office and ask them to mail the bills out to us?
Well, my memory was that bills were always the responsibility of the sergeant of arms. Are you
Okay.
around, Pam?
Yeah, I am. I mean, this is a sort of different situation where our office has been mailing them out, but only on request. We tried to do that automatic mailing early in January, but a lot of the bills weren't printed yet. So it created, it wasn't smooth. And to do the 400 mailings was right. We don't have like a mailing list sorted by committee. We had them sorted alphabetically for the whole 400. And anyway, it was, as you can understand, a big chore. So we've been doing them on request for the Senate bills, but the mail is not, as quick as it once was. So.
Well, I hope in Concord she can get them pretty quickly.
Yeah, I know.
You would hope.
You would hope.
I mean, I'm willing to
everything
pick them
goes
up.
to Manchester, right, or Nashville, wherever the big sorting.
Exactly. Well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, Representative Bartlett, they were mailed out. I remember the discussion. I don't remember which day, but it certainly wasn't Friday.
No, they didn't. Oh, rats. Let me mute this.
So yeah,
it's actually a lobbyist who's calling me.
So our office is, the short answer is that our office is the right place to go.
Okay.
We do our best, but if people can pick them up, that's fantastic. That's clearly an option.
I'm sure she can pick them up. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure she can do that for you.
Right.
That makes sense.
We'd love to be able to, get them immediately to everybody, but it's trickier than you might first.
Right. And Dawn, you were able to get that big report for the Liquor Commission by picking it up, right, Dawn?
Yeah, she did. She did. And she got the status report when she was in yesterday or Monday. So yeah, coming to Concord. Excellent. We can do that.
Well, I hope to be there soon. Good. Yeah, I'm assuming by May everybody will have been vaccinated. So
if I request these bills and go down to the security office in the State House, could they have an envelope of those bills for me?
Absolutely. That you could go to the LOB reception desk. We could make an arrangement.
Okay.
So are you making that request right now?
I am. I'd like the bills for next week.
Sure.
That would be great. And you can just let me know when they're ready and I can stop by. But I believe the rest of our committee members would like them to be mailed out to them for next week.
Okay. I'll put that request in right now. So
okay,
they
great.
Can start working on it. I'm in the office, so that's an easy thing.
Okay.
We'll do our best.
Thanks for your help.
You're welcome.
Pam,
Yes.
do you need help over there? I mean, in Concord, to get this to get the bills out, I can certainly drive up to Concord. It's just a 15-minute drive.
No, thanks for the offer. I think we're set. I mean, there have been times when people have been largely remote, but there are enough people in the office now. That was an added wrinkle earlier, but thank you.
Sure.
Pam, this is Chris Herbert.
Yes.
I got the thing squared away down here. For some reason, everything in the legislative email, my legislative email was marked as spam. So I don't know who could have done that, but
it wasn't me.
No, well, I'm pretty sure it was me, but I was probably thought I was deleting something or whatever. But My daughter is here, so she figured it out in about 30 seconds.
Oh, you've got tech support. Excellent. So,
Yeah.
so do you want to continue? Do you want your invitations to come to your legislative account or your personal account?
My personal account.
Oh, okay.
My legislative email is just clogged up with stuff I don't want to read.
All right. But you haven't been getting them on your personal account because they've been going to your personal account.
No, I've been forwarding, I've been getting them in the legislative email and then forwarding to my Gmail account. And that's how I sign on. I'm talking about the Zooms here.
Right, me too. But until today, I've been sending them to your personal account every single time.
I don't know. It was in the spam folder. I don't understand this stuff. So
yeah, I don't either. Believe me, I just so I'll continue to send
just
it.
continue to do it, and if it keeps going into spam, I don't know what to do.
Well, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to make that email that's coming in as a favorite. You're supposed to like actually cut and paste it into your customer or your contacts list, so that it's a contact that's a preferred contact. So that is supposed to one way to stop it from going into junk mail.
Yeah.
So you can kind of make it a rule in your email.
And then look at your junk mail account, your rules in junk mail, and see what your rules are. Your rules might be a little too strict because, for instance, if she's sending them out bulk with multiple names on that with the email, then you do one each person.
Yeah, Zoom just you load all the addresses and names into Zoom directly, and it sends them. I don't.
He doesn't like,
but it's not me. It's me loading
it doesn't like whoever was sending it. Like for longest time, and because I have, my email address, Prodigy, is older than AOL. It's the oldest out there. So I was having trouble with the Liquor Commission. They couldn't get any of my emails. I couldn't get in. And even when I was on the board of New Hampshire Children's Health Foundation, they had to use my Gmail account. They ended up having to use a different account simply because my Prodigy was blocked. And that I had the same problem with the State House, and that we figured out was actually the State House internet provider here in Concord was throwing anybody with Prodigy out. So
I remember. I thought Prodigy was gone for a while, and now it's back.
Well, no, Prodigy's always been there. It's just had multiple owners. I feel like a bank customer. Right? Every couple of years, I have a new name for my account. So right now it's AT&T. So I'm pretty safe that we're not going to be shuffled again. But they did drop my dial-up. I don't have my dial-up feature anymore, which if I ever used it. But the good news is they then refunded me all the money I was paying for that feature, because I was paying it just to keep my email address. But turned out maybe I didn't need to do that or whatever. But so I got a refund. So, but no more dial-up.
Well, I mean, the Zoom invitations come addressed from HCS, but anyway, there's definitely some people, there are issues, and we've tried to just use as many addresses as people have and hope that one of them gets through.
Right.
But I don't know what happens with Representative McAleer, because
hey, Chris, are you there? Chris McAleer, are you there? Or have you gone to get your coffee?
He might have stepped away, because he comes in as an attendee, and
right, he's keep hitting the wrong thing coming in. So I just want to know whether, like, I noticed that the new link we got today was at 7:57.
Right.
And so I just wanted to have him go through his mail and see that one at 7:57 and know that that's the one he needs to click on to get in.
Right. I'm sure he just uses the calendar Zoom address.
Right.
As a participant.
Right. Which then
he's
attendee.
As an attendee, and then I move him over, or Representative Hunt moves him over, but right at 9 o'clock, there's a lot going on, and I don't always see him the second he arrives. So it's
right. When you picked it up, I didn't even see him. but
Right, we do our best. He gets there in time.
Okay. 38.
John, is that better?
Perfect.
Okay, so what
Did it.
I went out and I didn't sign back in under audio. I just did the picture.
Perfect. That's right. You didn't. Right. Great. Good.
And Mr. Chairman, just as long as I'm sending the bills for next week to all the Democrats, I might as well send them to all the committee members since everybody's at home. What do you think?
It's all based on the request, but if it's easy just to do it for everybody, don't bother with me because I won't get it in time. We're Pony Express out here, so don't.
Hey, I don't need it either. I can print my own and.
Okay.
I have a separate computer right here, so I just pull it up on that.
I don't need to have anything mailed to me either. Thank you, though.
Okay, yeah, I hate to make it a partisan thing. So.
I'm not offended by that. I just download everything electronically and then I scribble my notes.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, we know the Democrats really want to cut trees and waste paper, and we understand.
One of the greatest sounds is a chainsaw.
Right. But whenever I used to joke about cutting trees, Gene Chandler reminded me that was money for the North Country, that they wanted more paper. That was so.
That's how I beat him, John.
That's how you beat him.
They do grow back.
So you're waving on having these paper things mailed to you?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I am.
Oh, okay.
Okay, great. Thanks.
It's not all Democrats.
I like the mail, and apparently all my email goes to spam anyway, so
We've got to get through to you somehow.
it's impossible.
Well, one thing I did solve in terms of my email type issues is that I do have a Gmail account, but I don't tell anybody. It's sort of secret. I keep it, I just assume not get too much stuff in that account. But then every time one of these things come up, so Pam for a period of time was using my Gmail account, but then the State House got solved my Prodigy problem. So that you might want to have that. And it came, and I got it forced because I was a Samsung Android phone, so it made sense to have a Gmail account. So, and I don't do Facebook. That's the other nice feature of the Gmail, is that sometimes you can join an organization, get in with using the Gmail account as your login rather than the other one is Facebook, which I don't go near Facebook. I'm deathly afraid of it. Totally fearful. So.
It's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, well, I mean,
well, you're missing my posts, John. So.
I'm sure there's something good comes out of it. I'm sure some people. I mean, I have a Gmail account. I mean, a Facebook account, which I have to have because there's sometimes like restaurants you can't get their menus. You can't get anything unless it's on Facebook. So you have to be able to get in. But whether anybody would ever find my personality, would ever find my whatever it is that you find on Facebook.
Profile.
Yeah, my profile. So because I'm pretty sure there's no picture.
Done.
So, I wouldn't know. I'm too afraid to go check.
I do as little of it as possible. Very, very little.
Well, it just seems like a big time sucker to spend all the time. And every time people post stuff and
it is a good way to get information out to your constituents, like about vaccines and stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely. Oh, definitely. There's a lot of activity that goes on Facebook, that I probably don't see, but
Right.
I go on just to check the kids, that's how your family members communicate with you, is through Facebook.
Now, we do have a Town of Ringe Facebook page. And because my wife is the president of the Ringe Chamber of Commerce, she's the one who, like vaccines and that kind of stuff. She does all those posts. So I don't have to do that. And my wife, because she was giving out shots, she's been very active in calling everybody and trying to get people to get the vaccines. She's been a little crusader for vaccines. So.
Hey, God bless her. I got both of my shots. I'm done.
Right.
Yeah, I got mine next Tuesday. My second one.
All we got to get to is 70%. That's it.
That's right.
I have my two.
Oh.
Where are we at with the 70%? How close are we?
25% in the US have been vaccinated at least once.
Uh-huh.
That includes natural immunity too. So if you've had the virus,
Right.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
But who's going to admit that they got it?
Well, most people do, I think.
Okay. All right. We're getting close here. So let's see. What do we have? Kevin Avar. I'm going to move Kevin up. You hear a little music in the background.
Oh.
Am I the only one hearing that? Okay, 9:45. Good morning, Senator Avar.
Oh my gosh, I made it.
You're in.
I'm in another committee right now, and we were just having a panic attack because I couldn't seem to log on to this site. So, phew, okay. So, hi everybody. It's good to see you. Nice smiling.
Well, we hear you.
We don't see you, but that's okay.
That's probably not a bad thing. I am the author of this bill. It's a very simple bill. It basically, the bill basically, it has to do with ATC or alternative treatment centers to organize businesses, corporations, and limited liability companies, and provides the procedure for alternative treatment centers organized as a voluntary corporation to convert businesses or corporations or limited liability companies. Right now, the ATCs are operating as a nonprofit, and this bill changes only one thing, and it allows them to operate as a for-profit. What we're learning is that because they can't benefit as other nonprofits by because it's a Scheduled C drug, and there are some federal regulations that go with that. They're not able to benefit as a nonprofit and pass the savings on to their patients. So they're asking that they can use the option to turn into a for-profit organization so that they can pass the savings on to the patients. Right now, if their operating costs, if they have to take out a loan, they can generally be paying up to 15% interest on those loans. And so instead of passing savings on to the customers, they have to pay off the loans or capital investments that they have. So this really is a simple bill. It doesn't change anything with the laws. It doesn't legalize marijuana across the board or anything like that. It doesn't do anything drastic. It just allows them to operate as a for-profit organization, allows them to lower their prices so that people that need the cannabis for medical use can get it at a reduced rate rather than the rates that they're charging right now. Other states are doing that by lowering interest rates with loans, and but because they're a nonprofit, they can't do that here in New Hampshire. So they're just asking to change the language a little bit, allowing them specifically to go into a for-profit status or LLC. It's that simple, nothing more complicated.
We've had this bill before.
Apparently you did, yes. And so hopefully it passes muster this time. It passed the Senate. So
yeah, what was the history? So let's have I guess my memory is I've never voted for it, but what was the history? What happened last year?
I wasn't here last year.
That's
so. I think it passed the House. I think it might have gotten vetoed. I'm not sure. This is another attempt. Maybe we changed the language a little bit. There were some concerns about creating. Senator French had a concern about it becoming a monopoly, so they amended it so that they couldn't become monopolies once they went for profit. If you folks decided to push this forward.
Yeah, but the idea is that you're going to get venture capital, not a bank loan, because banks don't want to loan to it. So you're going to go out and try to get venture capital. And the question would be is what happens if the venture capital was R.J. Reynolds?
I never heard of him. I'm kidding, John. I'm kidding. That question never came up. I'm sure that there's some folks that can talk to that specific, because that particular didn't come up. No.
Okay, Representative Herbert.
Thank you, Chairman Hunt, and thank you, Senator. Two questions, basically. Are you related to the school board member, Avard, here in Manchester?
It all depends.
Okay. Just a curious question.
Yes,
The other, yeah, you are. Okay, good. The other thing was, if I recall, the last time this bill came up, and I could be totally wrong here, but the concern was that besides the inability to get a loan or borrow money, was the concern over quality. I think that because there are some organizations that have a license and specifically right to provide a very pure, high quality product, and so if somebody venture capital or whatever came in, I think there was a little bit of concern that there would be these particular organizations that specialized in making a medicinal quality product.
That's what this is. This is medicinal. These are the medicinal providers here in New Hampshire.
Well, I guess that's what I'm saying is back then, I think the concern was that somehow they might get put out of business. So I just don't know if that's a concern today as it was then.
Yeah, this actually helps them to survive as an organization, according to them, and it also it changes nothing with the quality or the licensures or the restrictions or the distribution or anything of that nature. It really just changes a very simple status from nonprofit to for-profit, and there might be some venture capitalists, but I think that was one of Senator French's concerns, and he was concerned about monopolies. And I believe in the language. I can't show it to you right now. I think maybe Mr. McLaughlin can talk about that. That was one of Senator French's concerns, and he didn't want that to happen. So I think we amended it in such a way so that couldn't happen.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I guess that answered Representative Weston's question. So we have Representative Bartlett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, just to go back, this was passed by our committee last term and tabled. So that's one of the histories. This, I think, is the third time we've heard this bill. And it didn't have anything to do with medicinal versus legalization or anything like this. It was really a simple bill about allowing the not-for-profit to become for-profit, mostly because of the cost of doing business. So I don't really see a problem with passing this. Was already,
would you believe
it's been worked on? Yes, I would believe that. You're right. would you believe that?
Representative Bartlett, you said it better than I did.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee members? Seeing none, we thank you very much.
Thank you, committee members. I appreciate your time.
Okay, so next up, I'm going to call Mike McLaughlin, who is representing Sanctuary. Good morning, Mike. You just have to unmute yourself.
How's that?
Perfect.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Michael McLaughlin. I represent Sanctuary ATC, and I can do a quick review of what's happened in the past. Senate Bill 145 came to from the Senate in 2019. It passed the Senate. It moved to the House, where it passed the House on a voice vote. The governor vetoed that bill under his theory that somehow changing the way they do business could lead to industrial commercialization of the marijuana industry. That reasoning, we feel, fails in that the marijuana industry, so-called, today's New Hampshire therapeutic cannabis distribution centers, are controlled by the state. The license or the registration that they have to go through is not a right that they can just apply and get. It's a privilege offered by the state. So any changes in the way that the so-called marijuana industry operates under the full control of the state. So when you look at Senate Bill 38, what Senate Bill 38 says is what we have set up is a structure that does not help New Hampshire citizens. We did agree, and the governor agreed in his veto message, the therapeutic cannabis program is good for New Hampshire. What has happened in the 7 years since the passage of the bill is the Department of Health and Human Services have tracked the number of patients. I think it's up to 10,000. They've tracked the two issues that they feel are important. The patients complain about two things, number one and two. Number one is price. And the price is affected by the fact that, as Senator Avard mentioned, ATCs as not-for-profit corporations get none of the benefits that a not-for-profit corporation will receive. They cannot qualify as a 501c3 because the Internal Revenue Code and federal law says it's a controlled drug, therefore they can't have that. As a not-for-profit, you can't have an equity investment. Nobody can invest in a not-for-profit. Not-for-profits have to go for grants, contributions, and what we're left with is debt. The next cut of the federal issue is that federal banks, federally chartered banks, will not loan to companies that are in a business that is with a controlled federal drug. Therefore, you have to go to non-traditional commercial lenders in order to capitalize the business. What Senate Bill 38 does is it allows the conversion of a not-for-profit to a New Hampshire for-profit corporation. There is no benefit to the state or to the patients in the not-for-profit scenario that we are in today. Interestingly, people will say, well, we set this up and it should run as it's supposed to run, as it was formed to run. But in the last several years, we've had 19 bills that have made changes in the program. So changes in the mutation and the maturation of a program is natural. And this is looked at as a not-for-profit situation. It's something that's not beneficial to New Hampshire. Again, as Senator Avard said, there is no change to how this will be regulated, how it will be tested, how it will be advertised, which it isn't, because of Senate Bill 38. Senate Bill 38 is exactly the same as House Bill 1345 from 2020, which passed the committee and passed the House on a voice vote. It went to the Senate and died on the table. So the history of the bill is not negative. The only bump in the road for conversion was the governor's opinion at that time that somehow, I think he called it industrial commercialization would happen. Now, Representative Hunt mentioned moments ago, or somebody mentioned R.J. Reynolds could come in and become an equity partner. R.J. Reynolds could lend you $10 million today and become a controlling partner there. There's no real connection between how a conglomerate would show up. They certainly could lend you money. Now, again, under Health and Human Services rules, you cannot transfer the license. So anytime that you get involved in this situation, the state controls. There's no opportunity for R.J. Reynolds or Philip Morris or Canadian mega marijuana to suddenly appear in New Hampshire and take over the market. We control the market as it is today. And what Senate Bill 38 does is say, let's have a market that works as efficiently as possible for the people who are using it, which is the patients. And I'll happily answer any questions if I can. But yes, we've seen this bill several times, and it's always passed. So I urge you to look beyond the hidden specter of here come the big boys, and remember there's 10,000 people out there, including, it's funny, I was looking the other day, 20% of those people are represented by the members of the Commerce Committee. So think about those people and think about lowering the prices. And a little quick addendum, people near the border states, Mass, Vermont, and Maine, are going across the border to buy recreational marijuana to satisfy their therapeutic needs, which undermines the abilities of the New Hampshire ATCs to continue servicing our patients. And again, there was a monopoly issue that somebody mentioned. And it's funny, when I looked at the way the registrations were handed out, New Hampshire set up 4 distinct territories. Much like utilities, if you had a free market therapeutic cannabis world, everybody would be down south in Manchester or Derry. I mean, Derry has 230 registered patients in 2019. Manchester has 518. So what they did is they said, we're going to allow it to happen, but we need to be able to service people in the North Country. That's why my client, Sanctuary, is in Plymouth and Conway. So it is really, there's hard to find harm in this bill. As I said, there's been 20 bills or 19 bills that have made changes in conditions, in oversight. It's a constantly maturing process, and we hope that you'll see it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Van Houten has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. McLaughlin, for being here to take our questions. You may not be able to answer this one, but it seems that you have an intimate understanding of the bill, so I'll try to throw it your way. I'm looking at Section 3, Public Health of the bill, and parenthetical number 4 talks about Board of Managers as well as Board of Directors. I don't know if that's a structural change to the way things are run. I simply don't understand why that's as it is. Could you clarify that for me, please?
You have a term of art. An LLC does not have a board of directors. LLC has a managing director and a board of managers. So when you see that much of the language in the bill shows how you would convert to a corporation or how you would convert to an LLC. So for instance, I have an interest in an LLC. I'm a manager. If my company was incorporated, I'd be on the board of directors. So it's just a term of art.
Thank you.
In the bill shows how you go from a corporation or how you go to an LLC.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. McLaughlin? Seeing none, we thank you very much. Representative Edwards, I apologize for not calling you before a lobbyist. I missed you. And
no, sir, you didn't miss me. I was chairing my committee, and I just now joined you. So I appreciate you recognizing me as quickly as you have, sir.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so my 2-minute testimony on this is that a government does a few things well. It does a lot of things not well. One of the things it doesn't do well is it doesn't react to slow environmental change. And that is the case with our alternative treatment centers. I've been looking at this issue. This is now my 3rd term. I started in HHS, where we were hearing policy bills regularly about what kind of therapeutic diagnoses were going to be permitted and the like. And one thing that dawned on me pretty quickly is that we are way too involved in their strategic management. And why is that really critical at this juncture? Well, the environment around us, as everyone knows, has changed. We have recreational pot in all directions, Canada, Maine, Massachusetts, Vermont. So there is a new source of legal regulated weed that is a competitor to our alternative treatment centers. And so if we want to allow our alternative treatment centers to survive this new wave of competition, where people will just go back to the self-treatment, and forget the ATC system that we've established, then they can do that. So I would encourage you to consider this bill and recognize that a more flexible, adaptable management style is essential if these alternative treatments or centers are going to survive. If you don't want them to survive, don't change it. You know, if you want them to survive, figure out the smart way to give them management flexibility. That's what this bill is looking to do. And with that, sir, if there are questions, I'd take them.
Great, thank you. Representative Herbert has a question.
You're on mute.
I just got finished with all the thank yous, but the ATCs, I understand your reasoning and I don't disagree with it, but what would distinguish, after all is said and done, the ATCs from their competitors? In other words, ATCs now exist because they have some sort of a quality standard that the recreational suppliers don't have. So is it your opinion that the ATCs will be able to compete on price, but still maintain a distinguishing advantage in terms of quality?
So Representative Herbert, Herbert or Herbert? I don't know if the H is silent.
Bear, Herbert, I'm fine.
Bear.
Yeah, I'm English up here and
yeah,
I'm French in New Orleans.
So I've not met you and I don't really know your background. And so pardon me if the answer is a little longer than it should be, because I just don't know where I'm coming from on this, other than to say that as a matter of state policy many years ago, we made a decision that medical cannabis was something that we wanted to make available to New Hampshire patients. And so we set up a process and a procedure where an individual would go to their regular physician, and then if the physician thought therapeutic cannabis fit within the diagnostic procedures or diagnostic evaluation of that patient, he could or she could refer over to an alternative treatment center. The alternative treatment center would then sit down with that patient and take a fresh look at the conditions and would counsel that patient on the types of cannabis that could help them. And I think over half of the medical cannabis prescriptions are not smokable. They are tinctures and other edibles. And so, as you know, recreational marijuana, maybe you know, maybe you don't, but recreational marijuana is really thought of and is dominated by smokables. And so the nature of what a patient would consume through an alternative treatment center is likely to be different than if they decided to self-medicate and go to a recreational marijuana store. They may have edibles too. They may have tinctures too. I don't know. I haven't been into one of our neighboring pot centers, but so what we offer with our system is a kind of a medically related, patient-centric system of care, to where the patients receive palliative treatments suitable for their needs. And palliative is distinguished from something that will solve a treatment. It's just palliative just means that it's going to reduce the symptoms somebody's having of their disease condition. So so it's all medically regulated. And if those were to go away, and we put people in a situation where they had to self-medicate, then they would be less likely to obtain the best cannabis for their particular medical condition. So
I just have a follow-on question, if I may, Chairman Hunt. does insurance play a role here at all? In the sense that if you're doing a medically prescribed drug, that you can have it insured?
I think that's a great question, and I bet you there's actually someone on your committee that would have a better answer. I looked at it, I've been looking at this for years from an HHS policy angle and not an insurance angle. But
Yeah.
I think the answer may be that technically this is not a medical prescription in the sense that a referring physician has done a prescription and ordered it. This is made available through medical cannabis counseling. And maybe if you had one of those healthcare savings accounts, maybe it would qualify under that. I don't know, but I would defer to the real answer to somebody on your committee.
Thank you.
You're muted, Chairman, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Weston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative Edwards, for coming here with your with the information you provided. Right now, we have 4 of these ATCs. Do you know if all of them are doing enough business that they will be able to continue as a for-profit facility? And do you think that we may actually be seeing more once this change is made?
Those are great questions, and the most direct answer is I don't know. I haven't been into the weeds on this, but to an earlier question about what kind of management changes might take place in a more flexible model. Well, in marketing, you have the 4 Ps, and I'm going to be embarrassed if I can't remember them, but they're price, packaging, product, something else. But so we could see the evolution of new service models. I've never understood why we wouldn't allow the ATCs to have mobile dispensaries so that they can go into the northern parts of the country, counties that don't have access easily, and provide a different level of service. And so that's the kind of thing that I think we could expect to see with more management flexibility. And I generally believe that if you allow flexible, intelligent management, you're going to improve profitability. And so that's not a direct answer to your question, but I think this bill would allow us to have a more flexible management style and therefore tend to be more profitable and therefore more likely to survive.
Thank you.
Okay. Have no more hands, but thank you very much, and I'll let you get back to your committee.
All right. Well, thank you.
Okay. So Ted Rebolitz.
Yes. Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Ted Rebholz. I'm the president of the board of directors for Temescal Wellness, which is one of the alternative treatment centers. We currently operate 2 of the licenses in New Hampshire. We have a production facility in Manchester, dispensaries in Dover and Lebanon, and we're happy to say that we'll be soon opening another dispensary in Keene. We've served New Hampshire patients since the beginning, having commenced cultivation in Manchester in January 2016 and opening our first 2 dispensaries in May of that year. And we not only operate our brick and mortar stores, we also make all of the products that we sell. And quite frankly, if you look across the economy, there are not that many companies that are as vertically integrated as we are. We are not allowed to ship cannabis products across state lines. So as a result, we have to replicate our entire supply chain at our Manchester facility. And those operations are very capital intensive. Most significantly, we invest millions of dollars into growing rooms that are highly sanitary and highly controlled for temperature and humidity to optimize the safety of our products for New Hampshire patients. All of our products are tested for safety and potency by an independent New Hampshire-based lab. We support this bill because it will enable us to lower prices and to invest more into education and product development. It will not alter any of the regulations that ensure safety for our patients. Since the original medical cannabis law in 2013, this legislature has on multiple occasions adjusted the program to benefit patients, and SB 38 presents another opportunity to improve the program for New Hampshire patients. As mentioned by others today, we are required to operate as a nonprofit, but we do not get any of the benefits of a nonprofit. We do not have 501c3 status. In fact, due to Section 280E of the Internal Revenue Code, we actually pay a much, much higher effective income tax rate than other businesses. Further, as also mentioned, we are simply not allowed to borrow money from traditional banks. Our only financing option for the past 6 years has been to borrow from private individuals, paying upwards of 18 to 20% interest. That means about a third of our revenue every single month is soaked up by debt service. Passing this bill means reducing some of those onerous barriers, enabling us to lower prices for patients and to keep those patients and their money in New Hampshire. Currently, there's an aggressive and targeted marketing campaign by dispensaries in Maine, and those caregivers are trying to entice New Hampshire patients to purchase cannabis there instead of from one of the designated alternative treatment centers here in New Hampshire. There are regular, persistent print and radio advertisements, especially in the Dover community, telling them that Maine is the best place for them to get affordable cannabis, boasting that they're merely 20 minutes away from downtown Dover, and even offering to help them get a card if they don't already have one. We've even had New Hampshire patients reporting that they received a discount at the time of their purchase in Maine because they're a New Hampshire patient. So today, operators in Maine and Massachusetts are both able to undercut our pricing, primarily due to this difference in structure. Neither of those other states requires cannabis businesses to be nonprofit. Massachusetts did originally, but interestingly, they've since eliminated that requirement. So today we have patients reporting to us daily that they're purchasing product in Maine and Massachusetts solely due to the lower prices. We actually conducted a survey of our patients, and 1 in 3 reported purchasing cannabis out of state, and over 50% report that price is the reason. They don't like this. Patients don't like crossing state lines with cannabis product. It's actually a violation of federal law. They also don't like spending their money out of their home state of New Hampshire. They don't like having to question whether the product they purchase in Maine has been tested as it is here in New Hampshire. And they also don't like the lack of education. The operators in the other states don't take it seriously. But at the end of the day, the bottom line is that patients in New Hampshire are always concerned about affordability. And they're going to go where they can actually afford it. So we're very grateful that the legislature has made multiple improvements to the original 2013 law, changing the corporate structure, but not changing any of the regulatory requirements is just one more of the changes that needs to be made to provide better access and affordability. We pride ourselves on providing quality cannabis for our patients, and we encourage you to pass this bill. It is a very modest change that will allow us to lower prices for patients, again, while still maintaining the strict regulations that will continue to ensure patient health and safety. Thank you.
Thank you. And that was a wonderful testimony. I hope you did post that, send that up, listed, put it on our webpage. So Representative Herbert has a question.
Thank you, Chairman Hunt. Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Rebholz. So I'm going to ask the question in regards to insurance and how that might work because you are providing a high quality medicinal product, which it sounds to me like a prescription actually, and how that would work. And number two, you have vertically integrated your distribution system, which is expensive, I'm sure, and with your various clinics. But it sounds to me as though, who regulates you in terms of your product quality? I mean, the Liquor Commission, for example, enforces liquor laws, right? And we have our own stores, and there's good reason for that. But if you were going to compete and you get to drop your price, which is, I think, necessary, I'm not disagreeing with this legislation, by the way. Would it be out of a question that you would could distribute through, say, the liquor stores? I mean, I'm just throw that out there because they're already there, and if somebody has a card and a prescription can go in and buy your product, and maybe that's not a good idea. All right, because I don't smoke weed anymore. I think I started in '67, but I quit.
Okay, Chris, let's get to a question.
My question is two: what role, if any, does insurance play? And the second question is, would you think or consider distributing through a liquor commission?
That's it, your Representative Herbert. So in the answer to the first question, no, there is no reimbursement by healthcare insurers. And that really accentuates the point here, because New Hampshire patients, New Hampshire constituents, that price differential is that much more acute. If they get a bona fide prescription for Lipitor, for example, their out-of-pocket spend is going to be close to or at zero because of the healthcare reimbursement. None of that is applicable here in the case of medical cannabis. So not only are the prices to New Hampshire patients higher than in other states, there's no offsetting amounts from healthcare insurance providers. To your second question, of course, we would not do that today because it's not allowable. But our point of view is we want to maximize access for patients. For those that have gone to a provider and in consultation with their provider, determine that medical cannabis is a good alternative for them, we want to make it as easy as possible for them to access their therapeutic cannabis. But again, until there's a change in the law allowing us to sell our products at any locations other than our own ATCs, we will not be doing so.
Okay, Representative Abel.
Yes, thank you. Well, thank you very much for testifying. I really have two questions, so if I'll need to, I may have to ask them twice. But the first one deals with what would happen if this bill did not go forward, and that's really the survivability question. With lower price competition across from other states, and your difficulty in getting financing and so forth, is there a possibility that some of the providers now would end up going out of business? Is that possible, or is that unlikely?
I think it is unlikely. This is a business. I mean, it's tough to tell because you have offsetting factors, right? On the plus side in New Hampshire, you have a growing awareness of therapeutic cannabis as a potential alternative for patients. And as we've seen, the number of patients registered in the program has continued to grow year over year. However, even if you have new patients enrolled in the program, it's not necessarily the case that all of them are purchasing in New Hampshire. And as is the case with a lot of our patients, they purchase in Maine, but they still come to us. So they might buy 90% of their product needs in Maine at the lower price. They still come to us for that other 10% because they're getting 90% of the good education. They're getting 90% of the good advice from a strictly regulated therapeutic cannabis program that we have here in New Hampshire. So I think we're going to continue to see the New Hampshire program basically just trudge along. So I'm not concerned about the survivability, but I am concerned about our ability to continue to innovate, continue to serve patients, and to reduce prices. Right now, the prices that we're able to offer are artificially inflated because of this restriction on our corporate entity form.
Okay. Thank you. May I ask one further question?
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yes. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Well, the second question was price, and I can certainly see the reason, the rationale for believing that you could lower prices if your cost of doing business were lower, but that also becomes a matter of our taking it on faith Are there any other states where something comparable to this has happened, where nonprofit providers have been able to become for-profits, and that there has been a reduction in price? Or do we just take it on faith that that would happen?
So Massachusetts is a good example of a state that, like New Hampshire, originally required licensees to be nonprofits. However, they made the change so long ago. It was so early in the development of their marketplace that I don't really think it's comparable. And I'm not aware of anybody that's looked at the potential price impacts of that statutory change. What I can say from an operator's point of view, who wants to be successful in the New Hampshire Therapeutic Cannabis Program, there's a lot of demand for cannabis. There is a lot of demand. It's growing and awareness is growing, but people are going to look for the easiest way to fulfill those needs. And increasingly, they're recognizing that driving an extra 20 minutes, an extra 30 minutes to cross one of the state lines. And as we know, wherever you are in New Hampshire, you're not too far away from a state line. You can get over and avail yourselves of much lower prices. So from my point of view, it's a business imperative to meet consumers where they are. And right now, where they are is traveling out of state to avail themselves of lower prices. So if I want to compete, if I want us to be able to continue to innovate and serve New Hampshire patients, and hopefully a growing number of New Hampshire patients, I have no option other than to reduce my prices.
Okay, any other questions? I have one other question. The company that you work for, what is it called?
Temescal Wellness.
Temescal Wellness. Are you in other states?
We are. We're in Massachusetts as well.
Just Massachusetts?
We were formerly in Maryland, and we're no longer operating there.
Oh, okay. And so in Massachusetts, are you operating as do you sell it to the general public? Because in Massachusetts, marijuana is legal. So are you selling to the general public in Massachusetts?
Yes, we serve both medical patients as well as recreational adult use customers.
Right. So in that case, you don't need a card to get marijuana.
That's correct. You need government issue photo ID to prove that you're of age, but you don't need a certification from a healthcare provider.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, so I have gone through all the people who signed up. I have an attendee who just raised their hand. Heather. Okay, so I'll invite Heather to testify and tell us who you are, other than just Heather. You have to. Yep.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yep, no problem.
Technology is not my friend sometimes. My name is Heather Marie Brown, and I am a certified cannabis patient within the state of New Hampshire. I appreciate the work that you guys have put into this, but I am speaking in opposition of this bill. I do not feel that our dispensaries should be allowed to go from nonprofit to profit bearing. And the reason behind that is, and the gentleman that spoke to before, he had a lot of wonderful information, but it was a little one-sided. I believe that if you do this, then you open up the opportunity of what we call in the cannabis world, big canna coming into New Hampshire and getting their fingers into the cannabis market. I have seen in other states where nonprofits have started selling in a profit sharing way because of recreation becoming legal or whatever, and then watching their medical programs slowly dissolve. I don't think that that's what we need in New Hampshire. I think that if dispensaries are concerned with being able to lower their pricing for the consumer, which by all rights they should be, because I can tell you that New Hampshire dispensaries are not my first choice of preference when I need to get my meds because of the limited income that I have. I think that if dispensaries want to be able to reduce their costs enough to be able to pass that savings on to the consumer, then we need to look at the program at the state level. We need to pick apart the program and look at all of the areas and the restrictions and the requirements that the state has put on the dispensaries as far as operating goes, which places a huge increase in the costs and their expenses, which therefore they have to pass that cost and that increase onto the consumer, even just to be able to break even to continue forward. We already do have a problem with our dispensaries as far as growing for quantity versus quality. And I don't necessarily mean that in a harsh, negative, or insulting way. I'm just saying that, yes, there is a demand on our dispensaries in the state. I'm saying that in order for these dispensaries to meet this demand, they have to grow more and keep up on their quantity. And sometimes quality can lessen because of it. If they want to be able to save money, then the state needs to take a look at how they are treating these dispensaries and the requirements and the restrictions that they are putting on these dispensaries. That's where it needs to start. We all know that at some point in time in New Hampshire, recreational cannabis will be made available to the public. It's not a question about when it's coming. We know it's coming. You know, it could be tomorrow, it could be in 2 years, it's still coming. If those dispensaries are allowed to go from nonprofit to profit bearing, then who's to say when legalization finally hits New Hampshire that they're going to be able to, be able to produce enough cannabis to supply both the medicinal and the recreational market, and B, keep up with the quality that's in place. You know, we all want the cannabis to be lowered in New Hampshire, but the majority of patients will tell you they want the cannabis to, they want this to be New Hampshire cannabis. They do not want out of state interests to be able to come into New Hampshire and work with our dispensaries if they change to if they change from nonprofit to profit status. I think that that's a huge thing. We've already seen problems come from big pharma getting into New Hampshire. Why would we want the same thing to happen with cannabis? You know, we as a state, we have so much pride in being the first in the nation for this and the first in the nation for that. Well, how about we be a first in the nation as far as cannabis goes as well, and keep it locked down so that this is a New Hampshire available product controlled by New Hampshire interests. You know, why not take a look at the state level to be able to reduce the costs, the requirements, and the restrictions that are put on these dispensaries so that they can take and pass those savings on to the community, to the patients that they serve and represent. You know, I support all 4 of these dispensaries. I actually am I am the patient representative on the New Hampshire Therapeutic Cannabis Medical Oversight Board. And this is something I'm constantly saying at our meetings. You know, if we're going to do something to fix the medical program, then we need to take a look at what's going on at the state level first before we continue passing some of these bills that could potentially put New Hampshire cannabis at threat for the future.
Great. Thank you very much for your testimony. We do have a couple of questions if you're willing to entertain them.
I most certainly am.
Representative Burrows, you may go ahead.
Thank you for taking my question, which is that there's been a lot of testimony today that stated that if this business could be grown and the revenue could be grown, that the prices would would go down for consumers. So my question is, who do you think would be better, has more ability to work in the, what am I trying to say? Do you think that an entrepreneurial company would be better suited to grow that revenue and to grow the company than would a nonprofit that is normally not focused on business activities?
I personally believe that, like I said, I think that the restrictions and requirements at the state level will play a major impact in this, regardless of where or how the company chooses to proceed. Whether they're a nonprofit, they're still going to be held to those restrictions. If they turn to a for-profit, I mean, at that point in time, growing revenue is important, yes, but the restrictions won't necessarily be put into place that are in place as far as it being a nonprofit run organization. And therefore, I do foresee, yes, there may be extra revenue and savings that could be passed on, but I also foresee a problem continuing on the downhill slide as far as quantity and quality goes, which in that case would still continue to push New Hampshire residents to seek ulterior sources for their cannabis, because at the end of the day, it's the quality of the cannabis that actually lends into the medicinal treatment that myself and the other 9,000 and some odd patients in the state of New Hampshire are looking for.
Thank you.
Okay, Representative Bartlett.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. So let me get this right. Thank you for coming before our committee and giving us your view. So you purchase your marijuana out of state, you're on the oversight board, but you still don't want the free market to control the pricing, is that correct?
I do not want out of state interest to be able to get into New Hampshire cannabis. I have seen many of these companies go into other states, and the cannabis programs have been almost obliterated. Like currently in Massachusetts, in order to purchase an eighth of cannabis, you're looking at approximately between $70 and $85 for an eighth of cannabis. Now, up here in New Hampshire right now, it isn't that expensive, but it's pretty darn close to it. And, everyone assumed that when legalization came through in Massachusetts, that prices would ultimately go down. And that is not the case. Prices ultimately ended up going up and the quality continued to go down. So in Massachusetts, they are having a very large issue right now because the black market is alive and thriving and will continue to do so because of the high costs associated with cannabis. And those black market agents, they are able to produce a more craft cannabis product, which contains the quality that medical patients are looking for.
May I ask one more question?
Yes.
Okay, we're getting a little tight on time here, but okay.
Okay, that's okay. I'll forgo. Let anybody else speak.
Okay, Representative McAleer.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Heather, you said that legalized marijuana in New Hampshire is most likely going to happen. We just don't know when. If that happened and we decline this bill, aren't all bets off? I mean, isn't it mute?
I don't necessarily believe that. I believe that this bill could potentially have some positive impacts, but I do believe that changes need to be made to the bill in order to not allow the outside interests to be able to come into New Hampshire. That's where I believe the problems will lie, is when you have the outside interests coming into the state, because those individuals don't necessarily have the compassion and the devotion to taking care of New Hampshire patients as what an individual born and bred and raised in this state would do.
Okay, Representative Greason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Heather, for your testimony. But the question that I have, you keep mentioning regulations at the state level, that if we could remove those restrictions or whatever. Do you have any idea of what those restrictions might be that you'd like to see removed that would produce the results that you're looking for and encourage you yourself to begin purchasing here in the state?
Well, I know in one particular instance, when a dispensary needs to get rid of whether it's their stocks or, you know, the leftover debris after processing and harvesting the buds, the state has many restrictions on how that needs to be disposed of, involving taking that material, mixing it in with, I believe, at least a minimum of 50% sawdust, which that sawdust needs to be purchased by the company. Then it needs to be double and triple bagged. Then it needs to be put into a special waste disposal unit. Then there needs to be a special company that's hired to come and pick up such debris and material. All of that adds extra expense, when in reality, those products, the leftover debris, contain absolutely no THC. They are of no danger to the public and could be disposed of in a much better manner, such as allowing the facility to use it for composting, or allowing the facility to sell it to a registered composter in the state of New Hampshire that could then legally take that material and dispose of it and use it to go into composting materials. That in itself would not only cut down on costs for the dispensary, but could also offer a little bit of extra income as well. I also know that in the area of security, there are, obviously security is a necessity. We need to have that in place. But I think that to an extent, some of the security measures and requirements that we have for our dispensary may be a tiny bit of overkill. And there may be, in essence, creating a redundancy in the system that doesn't necessarily need to occur. Being able to change that in some fashion would cut down on an expense for the dispensary, because I don't know if you've ever looked into any of those security programs or products, but we're talking tens and thousands of dollars just for a dispensary to be able to utilize and access that. If we could change that up a little bit and have them put in place a security system that works, that covers it from seed to flower and still gets the job done efficiently and safely, then that would be another way to cut costs down for the dispensaries. So there are several areas that could be looked at that would cut down costs at the state level for a dispensary and allow a dispensary in some instance to save money or even bring in a little extra money from outside of the dispensary that ultimately could be passed on in savings to the consumer.
Thank you.
Representative Ammon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your testimony and taking our questions, Heather.
Thank you.
I just have a question about the situation in Massachusetts. Like, we know that our marketplace in our state is determined somewhat by surrounding states, but you had mentioned that I think you said an eighth of cannabis is $70 to $80 in Massachusetts, and you said the black market is alive and thriving because of that high cost. And my question is, do you know how much the state of Massachusetts taxes that amount? How much of that $78 or $80 is taxed by the state versus charged by the producer?
I honestly, I would be putting a guesstimate, but at my last check, I believe it was approximately $15 of that cost.
Okay. Thank you.
It could possibly be more at this point, but originally I believe it was about $15 on the cost, and which still does not bring it down in comparison to what you can get it here in New Hampshire. But then again, they still have restrictions in place that, you know, cause them to still have to put more money out than what they necessarily have to. So, and obviously that affects the cost to the patients.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all set? All right. Mike, I see that you have your hand up. My preference would be that you would send just send an email out to all the members. But if you can be a model of brevity in 2 sentences, then I'll let you have the last word.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very quick. I just wanted to point out that one of the things that the 3 ATCs do is provide discounts for people on disability income, Medicaid, and for veterans. And in 2019, Sanctuary put $402,000 worth of discounts available to the public. And one of the things that it's just important to remember, this bill is a short window for conversion. Conversion would have to happen December 31st of 2021. And just that's it. Any further. They are participating heavily in trying to help the patients and not just taking all the money.
Okay, sounds like you're getting in your car and you're on your way. So with that, we will end the public hearing. Let's see, I have the 18 in support, and no one was opposed until today. We had Heather, and with that, I will close the public hearing on Senate Bill 38. And next up is Senate Bill 59. And so with the senator who's the sponsor, we can raise their hand so I can, who is the sponsor? Okay, Representative Sherman. All right, excellent.
Hello, Mr. Chair. It seems like just yesterday I was with you all. It's great to be back. For the record, my name is Senator Tom Sherman, District 24, 11 towns on the Seacoast. I'm introducing Senate Bill 59, which is relative to the collaborative care model service delivery method. For full disclosure, there will be some experts who will be testifying and able to answer from the psychiatrist standpoint why this bill is so important. But a brief overview is that, as most of us know, there is a mental health crisis currently in the state. Part of that is workforce related. What collaborative care does is it allows a patient to go into their primary care provider, who then has a collaborative care relationship with a psychiatrist. And essentially the primary care provider taps into the expertise and knowledge and experience of the psychiatrist in a formal way. It is basically a consultation. The patient does not have to go and see the psychiatrist. The primary care or the provider will actually have that interaction. And then the psychiatrist will be able to help guide the therapy along with the primary care provider. This is super important because we as a state have been working towards what's called an integrated delivery network model. As many in the committee know, we have had a federal grant to make this happen across the state. And it really is the standard of practice for psychiatry and for behavioral health to be able to provide that point of service delivery. We also know when it comes back to workforce that there is some limitation on the availability of psychiatrists, and what the collaborative care model does is it vastly expands that availability of psychiatry across the state without sacrificing the quality. In fact, in many ways, it enhances quality. And so from the patient benefit, it is essentially one-stop shopping. They come into their primary care and they're able, within the limits of the primary care model, to be able to access their psychiatric services at the same time. It is associated in studies with better outcomes, better accessibility, and it's a better use of resources. It's more efficient overall. One of the benefits for this is overall decreased cost of services. If the psychiatrist feels that the patient does need to be seen separately and individually, of course, that is possible, and that can be part of the care plan. This is something that we have worked with the carriers on very closely. We worked with the Medical Society, with the Psychiatric Society. The carriers helped craft the language that you see before you, worked closely with Paula and Anthem, as well as Harvard Pilgrim, to do certain things. The original bill, as introduced back in 2020, had actual codes in it. We pulled those out and talked about the scope of service rather than putting in specific codes. That was at the request of the carriers. And then we modified language further with Paula's help to what you currently see. The Department of Insurance, working with Tyler, is neutral on this. They're not taking a position. But this is to ensure that this practice is allowed, reimbursed, and that's across all carriers. So with that, and with the understanding that there are experts who are available to answer some of the specifics of psychiatry, I would only add that in my practice of gastroenterology, we know that this kind of collaborative care model is most effective, especially for the more difficult patients with problems like irritable bowel syndrome and those. And in my practice, having this capacity would have been game-changing for those patients. What we do currently is we do it informally, but that means that we don't have as much support as would be optimal. And so this, in the field of psychiatry, is really the standard of practice, and we want to be sure that it is available across the state. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Representative Burrows has a question. And she's muted.
Sorry about that. Thank you for taking my question, Senator. Just from what I see of the healthcare profession, primary care providers are not super knowledgeable about nutrition and about psychiatric disorders or mental health issues. So I'm just curious, and this sounds like a great bill, but my question is, how will a primary care physician guide the treatment of a patient in this scenario, in the collaborative model? I know you mentioned that we will be helped by the psychiatric professional, but I'm just a little confused about how that would actually work in practice.
Yeah, actually, I have not seen the sign-up list. Is Dr. Ho on your sign-up list, Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Can I defer to him? He is a practicing psychiatrist, and he could. I can share with you the model that if you walk into our primary care providers at CORE here in Exeter, they actually now working through the IDN, they have access to psychiatry services. What this would allow, say, Dr. Buchanan or one of our primary care doctors to do would be to call up Dr. Ho and actually have a formal consultation where she would present the patient to Dr. Ho, say this patient has depression, and here are the manifestations of that. Here's the other medical history. They could exchange the history. Dr. Ho then creates a chart on that patient, and working together, Dr. Ho would give his psychiatric opinion, what would be the best medications, how to follow up, and they would continue to work collaboratively in that patient's care. So that is, but the patient themselves would not have to go to another office, would not have to spend another hour or so with Dr. Ho, unless in that review, Dr. Ho and Dr. Buchanan feel that they need a separate referral for formal psychiatric consultation. Does that help answer the question?
I do a
Further
follow-up.
question, may I inquire?
Yeah, no, that was a great answer. Thank you so much. So it sounds like, let's say a patient is seeking medication for a psychiatric or mental health disorder, that the psychiatrist could recommend a specific medication, which the primary care physician could then write a script for. Would that be accurate?
Yes, that would be accurate. And the other part of this, I'm sorry, I don't know your background, but we have had for many years in my field, I'll get a call from a primary care provider with somebody with diarrhea, and I will talk about it. It's called a curbside consult, but I don't keep a formal record. The beauty of this is that that formal record would be kept by that provider, by the psychiatrist. It would be something that the patient could access if they need to get a copy of their medical record. So this is a formal relationship, which is all of the data shows that that is a much more effective relationship in healthcare than the curbside consult that has been traditionally there. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's really helpful. Thanks.
Okay, so the chair will now call on Patrick Ho.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, for allowing me to speak today. For the record, my name is Patrick Ho, and my testimony today is on behalf of both the New Hampshire Psychiatric Society, which I serve as the president, and the New Hampshire Medical Society, of which I am an executive committee member. In these capacities, we fully support Senate Bill 59 as a strong effort to improve our ability to deliver mental health care in New Hampshire. And personally, as a psychiatrist, then I support this bill because I feel the frustrations of patients who come to an ED or seek inpatient mental health care, seeing no other option amidst the severe shortage of psychiatrists and other mental health practitioners in our state. So I will keep my testimony brief and will just briefly provide some additional overall context in addition to what Senator Sherman had just outlined really well for collaborative care model services. And of course, one of the things to mention is that although New Hampshire has the highest proportion of citizens suffering from mental health disorders out of any state, nearly a quarter of these citizens do feel that their mental health care needs are unmet. And this is in part, like Dr. Sherman had mentioned, due to a shortage of psychiatrists. And to provide a little bit more context about collaborative care model services, then this is definitely a feature that can bridge the gap with better care coordination via integration of mental health and primary care. So this is truly collaborative in that there is a team approach consisting of a primary care provider, a care manager, and a psychiatric consultant, which ideally would be an MD or DO psychiatrist. The team cares for a defined group of patients within the primary care practice and closely tracks each patient's progress. And so in that way, then instead of a psychiatrist seeing one patient individually, then the psychiatrist is able to help the primary care provider care for an entire panel of patients. Treatment is adjusted if patients are not improving as expected. Patients who don't respond to treatment are referred to more intensive mental health specialty care, including seeing the psychiatrist. Instead of psychiatrists seeing all patients one-on-one, the psychiatrists provide caseload consultation to a population of patients for the primary care practice, providing proactive and effective mental health care. This approach, of course, would improve access, health outcomes, and reduce provider burnout for both the primary care physicians on the front lines of illness in our state, both physical and mental, and of course the psychiatrist. Medicare and federally qualified health centers and rural health clinics already do allow reimbursement for collaborative care model services. And this legislation would allow for primary care providers to bill commercial insurers for the model, which would safely increase access to mental health care. So finally, with the added stressors of COVID-19, the need for mental health care services is higher than ever. And this makes the lack of access to these services even more pronounced, and strains other healthcare resources like emergency departments. We've of course seen in just the last month with so many children and adults waiting for inpatient psychiatric beds that this has become untenable. So it is really now more important than ever that we allow for the use of evidence-based practices to increase the availability of mental health services in our state. So I urge you to vote in favor of Senate Bill 59, and I'm certainly glad to take any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any questions from committee members? Representative Ammon has the question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your testimony. You had mentioned that, I believe you said New Hampshire has the highest percentage of citizens suffering from mental health disorders of any state. And I was curious if you had a source for that. That's kind of an interesting statistic.
Yes, thank you for the question. And when I send in my my written testimony, then I can certainly also send in the source for that as well.
Great.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. No other questions, Mr. Ho, Dr. Ho. Thank you very much. Chair will now call on Ken Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Ken Norton. I'm the Executive Director of NAMI New Hampshire, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. I'm a licensed independent clinical social worker in New Hampshire, and I've served as subject matter expert in the areas of mental health as well as suicide prevention for the U.S. Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, the Department of Defense, the Veterans Administration, and have served on a number of commissions and committees in New Hampshire as well. And on behalf of NAMI New Hampshire, our mission is, we're not treatment providers per se, but our mission is to improve the lives of all people impacted by mental illness. And we strongly support Senate Bill 59 and the collaborative care model. As you've heard, Governor Sununu has repeatedly stated, including last month, that we're in a mental health crisis. And one thing is clear about that crisis, and that's that we will not be able to resolve this crisis if we continue to do business as usual. So we need to come up with new and better ways of improving the service delivery model. And it's well documented that people with mental illness have long faced discriminatory practices relative to health insurance coverage by comparison to other disease states. But this is a model that that lack of parity continues today. The New Hampshire Insurance Department has mental health and addiction advisory council that's worked for several years, and this is the type of model that that has come out of some of those conversations. It's really a holdover from the days of asylums that we treat people with mental illness in a segregated model of care, where their mental health conditions are and substance abuse or addiction are treated separately from their overall care as a person. And we certainly know that there's a significant amount of research and evidence showing improved outcomes for patients when their care is integrated. And that's both for their mental health treatment as well as for serious medical conditions like diabetes, cancer, and heart disease, where there's a frequency of co-occurrence with mental illness. As you've heard, there's a significant shortage of psychiatrists nationwide, especially child psychiatrists, and New Hampshire certainly experiences that. And so towards that end, the psychiatric collaborative care model can be very effective. One of the things that I would mention that's key in there is, in addition to the care directed by the team and the care management, is regular assessments of clinical status using validated tools. And I would particularly note that one of those tools that we're now starting to see more regularly used by primary care providers is a life-saving tool, and that's screening for suicide. Suicide is the second leading cause of death in New Hampshire, in our state. And oftentimes primary care providers have avoided using those screening tools because they really don't know how to respond if the person answers in the affirmative. So having a psychiatric collaborative care model where they can review what's happening with a psychiatrist, what the symptoms are, what some of the other characteristics of that individual are, can be really helpful in helping to reduce the public health issue that we face relative to suicide prevention. It's pretty clear as well, and has been mentioned, that in the long run, improved outcomes will likely result in overall health and care cost savings as well. And so I'd like to thank Senator Sherman for sponsoring this important bill. It's clearly the direction that healthcare needs to move in. And on behalf of NAMI New Hampshire, I strongly urge you to vote SB 59 is ought to pass.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Any questions from the committee members for Dr. Norton? There's a hand up. Yep. Okay, Representative Hammond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your testimony. I have a question about consent by the patient. So let's say someone comes in and they seem kind of mopey and depressed. Does the patient know that their primary care physician might be contacting a psychiatrist? Is that done with patient consent, or could that be happening without consent?
It would be done with patient consent, and I can't answer that specifically because I'm not, we're not treatment providers. Dr. Ho might be able to answer that more effectively, but Dr. Sherman mentioned the integrated delivery networks that we've developed in New Hampshire, and those networks have an agreement between the patient and the provider that in certain circumstances information would be shared. So, but yes, that's a great question because it's really important, and ethically speaking, it would be a requirement for some informed consent from the patient relative to that.
Thank you.
Representative Bilo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for taking my question. Where do you see, or the question would be, could you see a naturopath being part of this integrated delivery network in the future? Because I think they play an important role as well.
Thank you for your question. I can't speak to that specifically for this bill because it's not, to my knowledge, part of that, the psychiatric collaborative care model. But I would certainly say from NAMI New Hampshire's perspective that we believe that there's many paths to successful recovery and treatment, and naturopathy would be one of those. And we would hope that, that's a consideration for people in terms of alternatives to treatment.
Thank you.
Okay. Great, thank you very much. Chair will now call on Sabrina Dunlap, who represents Anthem and is neutral on this bill.
Hi, thank you, Representative Hunt and members of the committee. My name is Sabrina Dunlap, and I'm Director of Government Relations at Anthem. As Senator Sherman said, this bill was around last year, and my colleague Paula Rogers was able to work with Senator Sherman and providers and others to get the amendment to a place we're more comfortable with. So Anthem does support the amendment. I do just want to point out that Anthem already covers the collaborative care model addressed in the bill, and we've been ready to reimburse for this for a while. The issue is utilization, and for some reason, providers just not using this very often. And my understanding from Senator Sherman is that the hope is the legislation will encourage more use by providers of the model, but I did just want to flag that we do already cover this. So anyway, we want to thank Senator Sherman and others for working on the amendment, and thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
So do you know of the other companies, whether they also offer it? Or I know this is kind of an awkward question for you, but does Harvard cover this also?
I'm not 100% sure. I would be surprised if other carriers did not also cover this model.
Okay, so the issue is, the reason we're putting this in is just utilization, to get more people to try to take advantage of it because they're in the statute.
That is my understanding.
Okay. Representative Abramson has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are you able to hear me through the mic?
Yes, we are.
Okay, terrific. My question is, my reading of this bill is it does look like a state mandate.
Is that a question?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Companies?
Sorry, is the question whether it's a mandate?
Yeah.
Yes, whether it's a mandate.
Under RSA 415.
So I'm probably not the best person to answer that. I assume someone from the New Hampshire Insurance Department will be speaking to this. I would leave it there and defer to them.
Okay. Okay. Tyler did not sign up to speak, but I'm sure he could help out there.
Well, there's not a fiscal note on this, and there's not a business impact in the bill. So I'm wondering what the net effect is going to be on insurance premiums.
We generally don't, when a health insurance mandate, it's hard to quantify. We do have a process in which we can have the department do an economic review and see what the impact of a mandate is, but we don't. It is true it might not show up on anything in terms of the bill, or certainly the fiscal note. All set? Okay, and we have no more questions. We thank you very much. Okay, now going back. So I now have Jake Berry. And let me find you. Jake, if you want to raise your hand and I can, there you go. Okay, thank you. Oh, and then Peter Bragdon is here, so he can tell us about Harvard. Okay, so go ahead, Jake.
Okay, good morning, Mr. Chair, honorable members of the committee. My name is Jake Berry. I'm the Vice President of Policy at New Futures. As many of you know, New Futures is a nonpartisan, nonprofit health policy and advocacy organization. We've been working for more than 20 years to address behavioral health issues in our state. I don't want to repeat too much of what's been said this morning. Certainly it's been covered well, but I do want to emphasize New Future's strong support for this bill. I know I don't need to tell you about the deep toll that New Hampshire's ongoing mental health and addiction crises are having on our state, and we fear the COVID-19 pandemic will only further exacerbate these issues. Under COVID-19, more than 30% of Granite Staters are reporting symptoms of anxiety and depression and other mental health concerns, according to data from the Kaiser Family Foundation. And of those, nearly 20% reported unmet needs for counseling and therapy. Care coordination has not long been seen as critical to helping our state overcome the ongoing behavioral health crises. By supporting the collaborative care model, SB 59 would go far to enhance care coordination across our state and to extend behavioral health services for those in need. As we've discussed today, collaborative care has been shown to eliminate barriers to care, improve clinical outcomes, and reduce treatment costs for many behavioral health conditions. This bill will help to maximize these positive impacts and help us to overcome the ongoing behavioral health crisis. So with that, we ask you to vote ought to pass, and I'm happy to take questions.
Great. Any questions from the committee members? I do not see any, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Peter Bragdon, representing Harvard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope you can all hear me.
I didn't drag you into this, but
no, that's all right. For the record, Peter Bragdon, representing Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, and like Anthem, we're neutral on the bill. We're supportive, certainly, of the collaborative care model and all the benefits that Senator Sherman mentioned. And like Anthem, these are things that we do and would cover. And I think the big problem, as Sabrina said, is just the utilization and perhaps because people don't know it's available. So I wasn't going to testify since we're neutral, but since the question was asked, I thought I would provide an answer.
Appreciate it very much. And I assume that's all it needs from you. So thank you very much, Pete. Okay, so I have one more person signed up, Charles Brackett. And I'm promoting you up, Charles. And I see you're with Hitchcock. Are you a Dr. Brackett?
Yes, hi, I am Charles Brackett. I'm a primary care physician at Dartmouth Hitchcock and part of a team that's implementing the collaborative care model of behavioral health integration into the primary care clinics of our system. So we've heard about the crisis situation and that there aren't enough psychiatrists to go around. But in addition to this lack of psychiatrists, stigma and negotiating a complex system are also barriers to behavioral health care. And integrating behavioral health into primary care can help address these barriers by mainstreaming it, making it more kind of a usual part of medical practice. And I just would clarify that the collaborative care model is a specific model of behavioral health integration. It is not a co-located model. The care manager, or we call them the behavioral health clinician, doesn't just manage care. They actually do counseling that supports the primary care's interventions pharmacologically and otherwise. And then the behavioral health clinician is supervised by the psychiatrist. So usually the psychiatric input is kind of indirect, but the psychiatrist is also available for consultations. So the impact study of the collaborative care model demonstrated that $1 spent on collaborative care saves $6.50 in overall health costs because it reduces costs for physical conditions and reduces admissions and ED visits. And in a fee-for-service environment, these savings go to insurers, while many of the expenses of the collaborative care model are not covered and are borne by the clinic. Most insurers have actually recognized this, and all of the insurers that we looked into in New Hampshire are actually already covering these codes, but I think it's important to make it a requirement to prevent backsliding. So Medicare added these codes in January 2017 to cover these expenses, but they've not been widely used, as was mentioned, because they're very complex to track the time. There's time requirements and other documentation that have to happen in a calendar month. So we're 3 months into our implementation and have not yet billed for these codes, but we're working towards that goal. And we're hoping if we can effectively bill for these codes and cover our costs, we can expand our model and better meet the behavioral health needs of the population. So it's not practical or ethical for us to treat patients differently based on their insurance. So it's critical that these billing codes are covered by all payers going forward. And I urge you to vote in favor of this bill, and I'm happy to take questions.
Great. Anybody have any questions? Seeing none, we're all thank you. Thank you, Dr. Brackett. Okay, that's all the people I had signed up. Is anybody else would like to speak on the attendees list? Okay, I don't see any more hands going up, so I think we're good. We had 119 people in support, 1 opposed. So I'm not sure where that opposed person was, but otherwise, I will close the public hearing on Senate Bill 59. Okay, and so we're now on to the last bill. Here's Senate Bill 97. And prime sponsor, Senator Hennessy. Oh, she is here. Okay, great. Perfect. All right. Good morning, Senator Hennessy.
Good morning, Chairman Hunt and honorable members of the Commerce Committee. I really appreciate your time this morning. And I have to say that was very efficient coming in, so thank you. You guys are doing really well. I am here to introduce Senate Bill 97. Oh, sorry, my name is Erin Hennessy. I'm Senator from District 1, covers Thornton all the way north through Pittsburgh. And Chairman Hunt, would you like me to introduce both portions of the bill? I am the prime sponsor on both portions.
Yes, that would be.
Okay, one after the other?
You're saying because it's 2 different issues rolled into one. Yes, we had one yesterday. We're getting more used to this is how the Senate does things.
Okay. So part 1 of the bill deals with direct primary care providers and will allow direct referral to medical specialists without having to have the patient go to another primary care physician to get a in-network referral. And we have Dr. Kopp on the line, who is currently a direct primary care provider in the state. And if you're not familiar with direct primary care physicians, these are medical individuals that are outside of the insurance network, and they provide medical services for a fee on a monthly or weekly or annual basis. And this bill relates to their patients who also have insurance coverage. So these would be in-network referrals for the patient, and saving time for the patients where they wouldn't have to go to an additional physician, and money, ideally for the overall healthcare costs, because there wouldn't be an additional physician visit. There was a compromise amendment made on the Senate side for this portion of the bill. And I'm happy to take questions on this part, but I believe there's more people on the line who would be better able to answer your questions.
Yeah, go ahead and discuss the other part of the bill.
Okay. Part 2 deals with in-network retail pharmacies. And what we've seen with the pandemic has given rise to the need for consumers to shop in alternative ways, from curbside pickup to delivery to mail order. This bill would prohibit pharmacy benefit managers from restricting in-network pharmacies from making or mailing or delivering prescriptions, and allow patients to access their medicines in ways that they are comfortable with. And we have pharmacists on the line to go into more detail. And again, I believe there was a compromise in this piece of the legislation also on the Senate side.
Okay, great. Is there any questions from the committee members for any of these two parts? Yes, Representative Burrows.
Yes, thank you, Senator Hennessy, for taking my question. On the first part of the bill, if you have out-of-network providers who are going to provide services to in-network patients, how do you ensure that you have the same quality and cost structure that you do for people who are in the network? So how are you going to maintain that quality and cost?
Well, it's I probably didn't explain it, but it's the patient's decision to have a direct primary care physician, and they pay the direct primary care physician. And they also purchase additional health insurance. And the referral process is no different. The scrutiny that the referral process goes through is no different as if an in-network primary care physician made the referral.
So what would be the reimbursement rate? Would it be based on what the physician bills, or what the?
So the direct primary care physician does not get reimbursed at all for this. It is they are making the referral. So this piece of legislation has to do with referral, having the ability for a direct primary care physician to make a referral to a specialist that is in a patient's insurance. Does that make sense? So they, without having to go to another primary care physician that is in the patient's insurance.
Got it. Okay. Representative Bartlett.
Thank you
Oh, you just muted yourself. And in.
Sorry. Okay, so Senator Hennessy, let me get this straight. So if somebody has the money to make a monthly payment to a doctor that they think will give them better service than if they went in a network, and they have no limitations as far as how often they see this physician, is that correct?
I'm not sure what the limitations are. I think it would be in that person's contract with that physician.
Okay, but the idea is that this doctor's readily available.
Correct.
So the patient calls up his or her readily available doctor, who they pay a monthly fee to, and the doctor says, no, you don't have to come see me. I'll just refer you to somebody in network. It saves money for that, so we say, boutique doctor. And so they don't have to see them. They just automatically go directly to the specialist. Is that correct?
No, well, yes and no in that, and again, there's people on the line that can answer these questions better, but there still is the referral process that they would have to go through with the documentation. Why does this patient need to go see a neurologist or an ENT or what have you? So they would definitely have seen their patient to determine that a referral is necessary.
May I ask another question?
Further question may inquire.
Thanks very much. Oftentimes, referrals are done by phone. Is that correct?
I don't know the answer to your question.
Okay. But if they don't have to have an in-office appointment to see this person.
So I see where the confusion is.
Okay.
The direct primary care physician takes care of the patient. What this bill would do would take out another primary care physician referral. So right now, direct primary cares cannot refer to their patients' other insurance program that they have, their specialists. So if I have insurance, but I choose to go to direct primary care, I would want my insurance to cover my specialist, the referrals to my specialists, without having to go to additional primary care physician that's in my insurance network to then get another referral to the specialist.
Okay. Thank you very much. That helps.
Yes, I think I got it. Okay. So, okay, you've made reference to other people. Who would you like to speak next?
Let's see, who's on the line?
I have a Dr. Kropp, Eric
Yes.
Kropp. Would you like him?
Sure.
Okay.
And do I stay on or go off now?
I won't throw you off. Sometimes I'll move you over to the attendees list so that so you can don't have to smile.
I'll hang in there for additional questions if needed.
Okay, great. All right. And all right, Dr. Kropp. Good morning.
Good morning. You can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Excellent, thank you. I'm Eric Kropp. I am a family physician. I do practice in the direct primary care model. I'm also representing the viewpoints of the New Hampshire Medical Society today. I'd like to speak to the bill in support of this bill with a few points, and then I'm happy to come back and address some of the questions and answer any additional questions. The Medical Society supports this bill in general, supporting measures that improve quality of patient care and lower costs to an individual as well as the healthcare system. And we feel that direct primary care is a model that achieves these aims. We're really at a critical point in the practice of medicine and healthcare, and we're really moving in the wrong direction when it comes to a lot of things. One of our concerns is the ability to effectively recruit and maintain a stable primary care workforce. There was actually an article published yesterday in the Annals of Internal Medicine reporting that patients living in counties in the US with inadequate primary care have a mean life expectancy of 310 days shorter than those living in other counties without such a shortage. There are a lot of studies around the world demonstrating higher contact with primary care leads to lower costs and better outcomes. And we know physicians and other providers in primary care especially are burning out at really alarming rates. Many are leaving clinical practice, and this just exacerbates the problem. And on a more human level, physician suicide is the highest rate of any profession, almost double the rate of the general population. So at the Medical Society, we really have a vested interest in ensuring that physicians are able to find sustainable and healthy ways to stay in practice and be able to serve their patients, putting their patients as their primary focus. And direct primary care is one model that can do it. The report that I attached in my email is one from the Society of Actuaries that was completed last year. And it demonstrates some of the concerns that have been raised are really not true, that direct primary care, which I think most of you are familiar, but I'll just review it briefly. Patients pay a flat periodic fee. The national average is, I think, around $80 to $100 per month in order to provide primary care services for their patient. There's a contract that is signed that defines what services are covered. It clearly notifies the patient that it's not itself an insurance plan. The RSA 329, the direct primary care laws actually define what has to be part of that so that patients understand what they're getting into. When patients understand that and they seek out a model where the doctor or provider, unburdens themselves from all the insurance administrative details, and you end up with a system with better contact, with more direct access, better availability, lower patient panels, longer appointment visits, all of those things that contribute to a better experience and better quality for that patient. When patients are able to combine that direct payment to the physicians with a health insurance product that often has a higher deductible but a lower monthly premium, their monthly out of pocket ends up being the same. Depending how they utilize it, their yearly expenses are often significantly less. It may not be intuitive, but I can go into as much detail as needed to demonstrate that. But it really has been demonstrated, and that report goes into details. There's been no evidence presented that this increases the cost of care, costs of premiums, that there are more inappropriate referrals, more patient complaints. None of that has been demonstrated. The reason that this bill is important is really to create parity. This direct primary care model already exists. These referrals already occur for all Medicare patients. For Medicaid patients, direct primary care physicians who are not a network contracted provider can do those referrals and orders in Medicaid, in PPO plans, in EPO plans, in certain HMO, even Anthem has HMO plans that don't require referrals. So none of these have shown any kind of deleterious effect of the physician not being a contracted member. We're not asking for any payment from these plans. None of that would change. All we're asking is that patients who can't afford these higher plans or who don't qualify for Medicare or Medicaid can still be able to access the benefits of direct primary care, that physicians and providers can provide direct primary care. And we feel like this is going to reinforce the patient's right to choose. It's going to help lower healthcare costs, and we hope that you will vote this ought to pass. One comment that I just want to make is that currently there are only a small handful of direct primary care providers in the state. There are, I believe, 6 or 7 physicians and a couple of nurse practitioners. There was an amendment to limit this as a trial period to 10 providers. And I would ask that there be a consideration made to amend it to a larger number of providers. I don't know what the growth will be, but I would hate for this to be a factor that, again, limits a physician or provider from being able to continue to practice clinical medicine in a healthy way. So I'd be happy to take any questions at this time.
We do. Representative Abel has a question.
Yes, thank you very much for your testimony and for joining us this morning. I'm wondering why, I want your perspective on why you believe insurance companies are not already honoring your referrals. Since you're not asking them for reimbursement yourself, you're a qualified physician, you're not in their network. Maybe that's the only reason. But I mean, and I'm going to ask this of the insurance company people as well. I don't understand why they won't accept your referral for reimbursement to another doctor.
It's an excellent question, and it's one that you'll have to ask them, because I don't know why. It doesn't make sense to me, and that's why I think this bill is important. So I'd like to hear that from them as well.
Great. Representative Abramson has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for taking my question. You referenced an amendment during your testimony. What was the page and line number for the provision that you wanted to change?
Sure, it is the current on line 14 of part 1, section numeral 1, line 14, certify the first 10 providers. And if I may make a comment as well, regarding another change to the amendment, one of the key reasons why direct primary care works is to basically distill down the practice of medicine to the physician and the patient. Now, obviously, physicians are licensed and compliant with all the regulations of the practice of medicine and practicing to the standard of care. But what direct primary care is able to do is reduce the administrative burdens by not contracting with providers. And we return this to the patients in terms of time and access. The direct primary care law put the guidance, the jurisdiction under that of the Board of Medicine rather than the insurance department by clearly stating this model and the requirements in order to show that this is not insurance. It's not boutique or concierge medicine where, if you're not familiar with the distinction, a concierge or boutique practice will be a fee-for-service practice that bills usually to insurance, but bills for office visits and also charges the patient additionally. We don't do that in direct primary care. And we would ask consideration that the oversight, the certification, as it were, that was inserted as an amendment, that consideration be made to rightfully put that under the Board of Medicine statutes, who have the jurisdiction for determining compliance with the direct primary care laws. Mr. Brannon could probably comment on that as well, to that effect.
Okay, Representative Herbert. You're muted.
Okay, once again, I just did my thank yous. Two questions. Number one is in regards to Medicare and Medicaid, do they allow you to make a referral?
I'm sorry. Was there more to the question?
Yeah, we just heard that there was a lack of usage, and then we heard that maybe that's, from my perspective, was that you can't make a referral to an in-network physician. Does that apply also to Medicare and Medicaid?
No, Medicare has a provision to register with the PICO system as an opted-out physician, so I'm not receiving payments from Medicare, but with proper licensure and a national provider identification and registration, they recognize that referrals and ordering is part of the practice of medicine, not the business of insurance. And so Medicare does have that allowance to be able to do that. There are some Medicaid, some of the HMO plans in Medicaid are restrictive and have not permitted referrals from me. However, Medicaid itself permits me to register as an ordering and referring provider. Again, that depends a little bit on which plan is being administered to the Medicaid recipient. And it even goes so far with Medicaid, they won't permit me to do the prior authorization for an MRI that they will permit me to order. So there's a lot of, we run into these at different times, and it can be a little bit unpredictable, and that's part of what becomes challenging to patients when they have an insurance plan that is supposed to cover this service at in-network benefits with this specialist, and yet they can't access that. So that's.
So it's that answer. Yes, further questions. So that answer sounded to me like sometimes yes, sometimes no, in terms of being able to make a referral. The other thing, my second question was, and I'll just lay it out there because I want to know from these insurance companies why.
Well, they're next. So
okay, that's a question for another expert.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right. Okay. So thank you very much, Dr. Kropp. And I have you listed twice, right? You signed up twice.
I think that Mr. Padmore from the Medical Society had signed in for me.
Okay. Right.
Crossed wires there a little bit. So
I want to make sure there weren't two Dr. Kropps in New Hampshire. Okay. So I'll now invite Sabrina Dunlap from Anthem to explain why she is in opposition to this bill, or to this portion.
Thank you, Representative Hunt and members of the committee. I'm Sabrina Dunlap, Director of Government Relations at Anthem. And yes, we do oppose the first part of SB 97 and the amendment. We're unaware of any problems or barriers to care related to referrals. And I mean, generally, if there's a problem with our, impacting our members that needs legislation, we would have at least heard about it. We honor referrals now, and it seems like there's a perception that there's a problem without an actual problem. So we've really questioned the need for this legislation. And as for the amendment, we're just puzzled by it. Our system doesn't really know about referrals as they come in, so I'm not sure how we'd collect information on these direct primary care doctors. Even if we could, I'm not sure the information would be timely or helpful. And I also don't know how we'd operationalize what the amendment is asking of us. So it's quite problematic on a few levels. And as a more general matter, we do have concerns for our members as we see more happening in the direct primary care space and potential for confusion for patients. And as you heard, direct primary care is outside the scope of the insurance regulations and statutes and outside the scope of the New Hampshire Insurance Department. And really, it's only for those who can afford this model of care. And I mention this to note that direct primary care, it functions in its own realm. And I'm not sure that's always clear to patients. And I know that's sort of a bigger picture issue on direct primary care, but I did want to mention that as something, that we're very aware of. So in closing, I'd say this is, I see this as legislation sort of in search of a problem. And I think the amendment would actually create problems. So we certainly hope this bill does not move forward. And thank you. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, we do have a question. Representative Abel has a question.
As predicted before.
That's you.
Threatened, yes, that's me. Currently, as an insurance carrier, do you're saying you do not require the original the primary physician making the referral be a member of your network in order to ensure the patient with a specialist that's in network, or is it that you will not automatically take a referral to someone out of network? I hope I asked that in a reasonable way, but
thank you for the question. I'm not sure I understood the second part, but I will say, I mean, most plans don't require referrals anyway, so we can start with the fact that this is a very small number of plans to begin with. And my understanding of how the process works is that a referral coming from in-network or out-of-network or a direct primary care provider would not be a barrier to someone seeing a specialist who is in-network.
Okay.
May I ask a follow-up
question? Yes.
Yes, thank you. Does this mean that, but does your answer mean that later that same individual, that the patient will be told, we're sorry you went to see the specialist, but the specialist wasn't in network, so we're not going to cover you. That's when the patient finds out. Are you saying that's not the case with your company?
So I think I just heard you mention specialists who are out of network, which is sort of a different issue, I think, than what's before us. But
all right.
I'm happy to, I am happy to get down more in the weeds and follow up with an email or another conversation. I'm just not quite sure I'm understanding the question there.
He suddenly muted himself. Oh, you took your finger off the space bar.
Good thing I'm not a surgeon. Put the appendix in instead of taking it out. All right, so a specialist sees, a patient sees a specialist in network, and there are no cases where you then tell them that that insurance won't pay. That never happens. That never happens with Anthem.
Well, I would never say never about anything, but in general, it is my understanding that that's correct. That if you see somebody in network who's a specialist, there's the distinctions with the referrals is not relevant in terms of how that specialist is then covered, and they would be covered as an in-network specialist.
Okay, great. All right. So next up is Samuel McCready. And Samuel, if you just raise your hand, then I can find you. There you are. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much, Sabrina. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, hi. Samuel McCready. I'm a family physician in Gorham, New Hampshire. I actually had some written comments that I had submitted, and then I had a brief summary of those that I was going to present here. Honestly, I feel like Dr. Kropp pretty much covered all of my points, and so I don't want to waste the committee members' time by repeating the same stuff over and over. I would just reiterate that direct primary care is not the same thing as concierge care. It is not about cherry picking wealthy patients or any of that kind of stuff. If that were the case, I wouldn't be in Gorham, New Hampshire, which is probably the most economically depressed area of the state. Direct primary care really is about, as the name implies, establishing a direct relationship with the patient. For the last, I guess, 3.5 years, up until the late summer of last year, I was employed in Gorham by a federally qualified community health center. I was an in-network provider. Eric described a lot of the problems in the primary care space with physician burnout and increased suicide risks and all that. And frankly, that's the direction I was heading. Typical day for me would be to show up at work at 8 o'clock in the morning and work through lunch and leave the clinic anywhere from around 9 p.m. till sometimes midnight. The majority of that time was not spent seeing patients. The vast majority of that time was spent dealing with paperwork and bureaucratic requirements that are part of the fee-for-service insurance-driven system. I'm not here to get into the weeds of the insurance-driven system. I'm not anti-insurance or hate insurance or any of that. But just the simple reality is that the system's broken. I think everybody can agree that there's some major problems. And direct primary care, and these are thoughts that I hear over and over when I talk to other direct primary care providers around the country. It's a safety valve. It's a way to say, hey, I still want to stay in practice. I still want to serve my community and take care of patients. But man, the current system is getting in the way of that. And so I left my job back in the summer. A couple of months ago, I launched a private direct primary care practice. I have not been in the space nearly as long as Eric Kropp, so I'll refer any questions over to him, as far as actual experience with problems with HMOs, because I personally haven't been doing it long enough to really run into any big personal problems. I will say that when I was an in-network provider, I certainly did. There was an awful lot of bureaucratic red tape and, having to get prior authorizations, and, you have a patient that's been on a medicine for years and suddenly they, want that medicine changed and stuff like that. If Ms. Dunlap is saying that Anthem, isn't going to ever, stop a referral from a non-network primary care provider, great. That's good news to me. I would say if that's the case, they shouldn't have a problem with this bill. If that's their position, then they shouldn't have a problem with it being in the law that they're not going to stop that referral. At the end of the day, I'm about a mile right now. My house is about a mile from the clinic where I used to work. In that clinic, I supervised mid-level providers, nurse practitioners, and PAs. Right now, if one of my patients comes to me and I say, gosh, this guy needs to go see a cardiologist, and I make the referral, if the HMO says it has to be an in-network PCP making that referral, my patient now has to go make an appointment and see somebody down the road who a few months ago I was actually the supervising physician for, to see if they'll agree with my medical judgment and agree with that referral. As far as the questions that came up earlier about quality of out-of-network providers, I don't know what to say. I'm a board certified family physician. I've been fully vetted by the state of New Hampshire and have a full and unrestricted medical license. I have a CAQH profile, which is basically a credentialing profile that's publicly available to any insurance company. They can go and they can look at my credentials. My credentials haven't changed from, a few months ago when I was an in-network provider. They haven't changed at all. Ultimately, this is about basically removing barriers to care. It's about being able to provide patients with good quality care that they can afford. Again, this isn't a concierge practice. My prices are on my website, gorhamdpc.com. They're transparent, they're very affordable. And frankly, I don't have it officially written on the website, but I have never turned away a patient due to inability to pay. And if someone showed up on my doorstep tomorrow and said, I'm homeless and have no money, but I'm need somebody to help me with my blood pressure, I'm gonna help them out. And I think the vast majority of family physicians, whether they're DPC doctors or not, I think the vast majority of family physicians feel that way. If obviously we all have bills to pay, but if I were in it for the money, I wouldn't be a family physician. There's much more lucrative and less onerous specialties to go into. Again, I feel like Dr. Kropp covered things much better than I am. I did submit written testimony, which goes into a ridiculous amount of detail. I'm happy to entertain questions if anybody has any.
Thank you. Any questions from committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so I'm with Heidi Kroll, who represents the America's Health Insurance Plans, is also in opposition. And good morning, Heidi. Did I do it right? Yeah, you're muted. You got to unmute yourself, Heidi. There you go.
Good morning. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I lost the connection there for way too long for my comfort zone. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Heidi Kroll. I work at Gallagher, Callahan, and Gartrell, and I'm here today representing America's Health Insurance Plans, which is otherwise known as AHIP. AHIP appreciates the amendments that were made in the Senate to try to improve SB 97. However, we do remain opposed to Part 1 of the bill, and we would respectfully request that you find Part 1 inexpedient to legislate. As you've heard a little bit about, this section of the bill deals with so-called direct primary care physicians. And so direct primary care physicians are PCPs who choose not to be in insurance networks or to be part of insurance networks. Instead, direct PCPs only serve patients who have entered into a special contract with them where the patient agrees to pay a monthly fee to this out-of-network PCP. And then the patient also agrees to pay out of pocket for any services that the PCP renders. And as you've heard under New Hampshire law, the direct primary care contract is not health insurance. And so the patient typically also has health insurance in addition to the special contract arrangement. And so the issue is when an out-of-network direct PCP refers someone to an in-network specialist, to what extent is the resulting claim covered? And so this bill says that the claim should always be covered as if the referral had been made by an in-network PCP. So it's important to note that in-network PCPs are, first of all, credentialed by the carrier. Credentialing certainly goes above and beyond just being board certified. There's actually statutory requirements around the carrier credentialing providers that are in-network. And secondly, PCPs are often work under a value-based care model, which means their reimbursement is tied to the quality of care provided to their patients and rewards both effectiveness of care and efficiency. And so out-of-network direct PCPs are not credentialed by the carrier, and they are not operating under this type of value-based care model. And so AHIP's concern is that this bill is trying to give providers who are out-of-network the benefits of being in-network by allowing them to make referrals to in-network specialists and then extending the coverage benefits to the resulting claims. To the best of our knowledge, this type of legislation only exists in one other state in the entire country. And AHIP is concerned about several negative impacts if the bill were to pass here in New Hampshire. First, we're concerned that this bill would undermine the carrier's ability to build and maintain networks, especially primary care panels within networks, which will in turn erode the value of networks for New Hampshire citizens and employers who pay the insurance premiums. As you know, providers that join networks typically agree to price concessions, which translate into lower premiums and lower costs for healthcare consumers. And in exchange for making price concessions, the in-network PCPs are given the opportunity to care for the carrier's members, including referring those members to in-network specialists when necessary and appropriate. If direct PCPs are given referral parity, there would be no to at least a lesser benefit or advantage to being an in-network PCP. And the concern is that in-network PCPs would stop agreeing to the price concessions. And of course, that would put upward pressure on premiums and copays and deductibles for New Hampshire's residents and employers. In addition, we're concerned that this bill could cause problems with patients' care management and lead to fragmented care because you'll be trying to manage a person's specialty care in network, but the PCP who is ordering the appointments with the specialist is out of network. And again, fragmented care could also lead to upward pressure on healthcare costs. I would also add that one of the challenges with direct primary care is that, as you've heard, it is only a choice for consumers who can afford to enter into these arrangements. And we think it's important to just be careful that the choice of a relative few number of people does not drive up the cost for everyone else. There's two final points I'd like to make. One is that whether this is a pilot program or not, as you heard, the amendment turns this into a pilot program. Carriers would need to upgrade their systems to somehow flag the direct PCPs or put them in a special category, separate from in-network PCPs and separate from other out-of-network PCPs who are not direct PCPs, so that the claims generated when direct PCPs make referrals to network specialists would be treated the same as if the referral had been made by an in-network PCP. And these system upgrades, would result in additional costs that would also need to be recovered in premiums. And finally, there's been at least some discussion that this bill could save the insurance carriers money because patients who are in these contracts with the direct PCP will pay out of pocket for some of their primary care services. However, AHIP believes that any such savings will be more than offset by losing the value of credentialed in-network providers, by losing price concessions from in-network providers, by increasing costs associated potentially with fragmented care, and then by incurring the cost to upgrade the systems in order to track the claims associated with referrals made by an out-of-network direct PCP. And so for these reasons, AIP is opposed to Part 1 of SB 97, and we respectfully request that you find Part 1 inexpedient to legislate. Appreciate your time in listening to this testimony, and I'd be happy to try to answer any questions.
Okay, we do have some questions. Representative Herbert has a question.
Thank you, Chairman Hunt. Thank you, Mrs. Kroll or Ms. Kroll. It's been said that this business is covered. Mental health care is insurable and is insured. But then at the same time, the spokespeople said, we're a little surprised that it isn't being utilized a lot. And I'm just curious as to what you might think may be the cause of something not being utilized that is, everybody agrees, needs to be far better utilized. My question is, do you have any idea why it's not being utilized?
So, Representative, are you referring to the collaborative care model that was discussed in the earlier bill?
Yes, I'm referring to this legislation because I'm getting two different answers, it sounds like to me. And that is one from the direct care physicians, and that is that they cannot make referrals. And then the insurance company is saying, well, one of the insurance representatives said, well, no, that's not an issue at all. But I'm hearing from you that it most definitely is an issue. So I'm trying to get everything straightened out in my own mind.
Yeah, and I think that certain plans are, there's a variety of plan options. And so, I think as you've heard, there are plan options where a patient does not need to worry about where the referral is coming from, whether it's coming from an in-network PCP or an out-of-network PCP. And I guess I would say that if you're one of those patients who can afford to engage in an arrangement like this, where you're paying a monthly fee, I think we heard earlier, somewhere between $80 and $100 a month, and you're also able to pay out of pocket for any services that are provided to you by that PCP. And then you want to be able to have kind of referrals coming from that PCP, then I think, you have the option. I think there are products out there in the market that you could purchase for insurance products where you would not have to worry about where the referral is coming from. The only answer I get, other part of the answer I guess I have for you is that maybe not everybody feels like they can afford that extra $100 a month and paying for the PCP visits out of pocket.
Thank you.
Okay. Representative McClear.
Thank you, Chairman. And I may have a follow-up. Ms. Kroll, do you have any idea how many out-of-network DPC doctors there are in New Hampshire?
I have not done that research. I'd heard during the testimony in the Senate that there was somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 to 6. But I don't know that information directly based on my own research. That's only what I heard during testimony.
Well, in that case, would it not be much of an impact? I mean, there's only 4 to 6 physicians that would be affected. It would seem to me that by approving this bill, it really wouldn't make that big of a deal. Am I wrong on that?
Well, I think the issue is that, again, if you're a patient using these direct primary care physicians, then like I said, there are insurance products out there that you could choose that would, like the representative from Anthem indicated, they have products that it doesn't matter where the referral came from, whether it came from an in-network PCP or an out-of-network PCP. And so if that's important to you, then that could be, then you could, those products are out there for you to purchase. But I think the issue is that for for certain products that are structured so that the referral does matter, those networks have been designed with that criteria or characteristic in mind. And so this gets back to the kind of the value of networks where, that relationship between the carrier and the provider, where the provider is making concessions in terms of pricing and reimbursement in exchange for the privilege, I guess, to manage the care of the patients that are in that product. And so I think that's part of the concern, and also, as I mentioned, at least some PCPs are operating under value-based care management models where their reimbursement is tied to how well and how effectively they're managing the care of their patients. And that care includes appropriate and necessary referrals to in-network specialists and avoiding referrals that are not necessary and not appropriate. And so if you all of a sudden interject an out-of-network direct primary care physician who all of a sudden starts making referrals, that's going to have a financial impact on that in-network PCP. And it's something the in-network PCP has no control over. So I think it's just trying to respect that there's a variety of products out there in the market. And, as the Sabrina Dunlap from Anthem indicated, we don't really see that the legislation is necessary.
Thank you.
Great. Representative Abramson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for taking my question. Maybe this is the same question. I'm looking at page 1 of the bill, part 1, part 2, where it says, an insurer shall not apply deductible coinsurance or copayment greater than the applicable deductible coinsurance or copayment that would apply to the same healthcare service if the service was referred or ordered by an in-network participating primary care provider. So on one hand, it's saying you can't charge more for the out-of-network provider, but isn't that the same as saying that you can't charge less for an in-network provider under the same rule? Aren't you saying, okay, we can no longer offer you a discount for staying in network?
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue here is, and kind of the heart of this bill is that some insurance products may be set up such that in order to see a specialist and have that service that the specialist provides and the claim that's generated from that, in order to have that covered under the benefits of your plan, the referral to that specialist needs to come from an in-network PCP. And if it came from an out-of-network PCP, then the services provided by that specialist would not be covered in certain products, in certain insurance products. And so I think what the bill is trying to do is say, toss all of that out the window. The claim will always be covered under the benefits of the product, no matter where the referral came from. And that's kind of where the rub is.
Very nice.
Okay, Representative Below.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question. Do you think insurance companies are managing family physician practices and livelihoods?
I guess we see them as partners primary care physicians, have the ability to join networks or not join networks, or join networks with certain health insurance carriers and not join other ones. So if they choose to join, then I think we see them as partners in managing the care of the members.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Kropp, I'm going to have you speak at the end here because you've already spoken, but I'll let you speak again later. But right now, I just want to get through our attendees list because we're now at the noon hour. So next up is I will have the insurance department speak. So Tyler, ooh, you just moved on me. Okay. All right. Thank you, Tyler. So Tyler Brennan from the New Hampshire Insurance Department. Good afternoon, Tyler.
Hello, so Tyler Brennan with the New Hampshire Insurance Department. So I'm going to address just, I think, then the main points that differ from prior testimony. And just to give you a little background on the direct primary care model, we actually have a law in the books, a provider contract standard that says a healthcare provider can't balance bill a member for anything but regular cost sharing. Because of this provision, it makes it almost impossible for a direct primary care provider to be in network. So in other words, if a direct primary care provider was getting paid fee for service and collecting a membership fee, that membership fee could be seen as balance billing the member for something more than regular cost sharing. So that's the dynamic that results in these providers being out of network. A few years ago, there was legislation that came forward to clarify that these arrangements are not insurance, because if you're an unsophisticated consumer, you might sign up with a direct primary care provider, pay a monthly fee and think, well, great, that's a good alternative to health insurance. I'm fully covered. Of course, as soon as you need specialty care, then you're not covered for those services. So the legislation that came forward to move the kind of oversight of the direct primary care practices and put them into the medical licensing statute, the insurance department had that preference because we're an insurance regulator. We're looking at insurance products. We're making sure they meet standards that are associated with insurance products. The Board of Medicine will, at least in the past, has said that they are more comfortable in looking at clinical standards than administrative standards. Nevertheless, that's where the requirement is. So as long as the direct primary care practice follows the guidelines, which are largely based on consumer notification, making sure the consumer knows what they're signing up for, then they can proceed and not be pursued by the insurance department for selling insurance. I think the department doesn't have a position on the bill. We do have some concerns about how things would play out, and that's largely because of the way benefit designs have existed for a long time. You may remember kind of the reference to the primary care provider as the gatekeeper. So the idea was if you went to see the gatekeeper, you wouldn't be going to a specialist and receiving specialty care that would be more expensive, and that specialist operating within their realm of comfort, offering services that perhaps were unnecessary. So you go to the primary care provider, you get treated there, and if you go directly to a specialist without seeing your primary care provider, getting that referral from that in-network primary care provider, then you may not actually have any benefits when you go to the specialty care. So I think to the extent that products are being offered that allow the kind of flexibility for you to go directly to specialists, that is certainly responding to perhaps consumer demand to be able to have that kind of flexibility. But I can't help but wonder if there isn't going to be a cost impact. In other words, the premiums for those products might be a little bit higher. So when you have legislation like this, I think it's worth recognizing that the benefit designs that require a member to select an in-network primary care provider essentially would be overridden by law. So there's certainly some operational and documentation changes, probably substantial ones that would need to take place. And the other concept of having an in-network primary care provider that is managing the patient's care, the insurance company, through that relationship with the primary care provider, can influence the primary care provider. So obviously keep the referrals in network, don't refer to an out-of-network specialist, but also perhaps refer to the most cost-effective specialist. One way they may do that is say, well, primary care provider, if the overall cost of the patient's care on average is less than a particular benchmark, you get some kind of financial reward. If you've got a direct primary care provider who's at a network, that relationship with the insurance company doesn't exist. The direct primary care provider may not hesitate to send you to the most expensive provider in state, having no incentive to kind of maintain your care within what it could be the most cost-effective providers. Dr. Kropp did refer to a Society of Actuaries study that came out last year, and I think the findings were interesting in there. So they took a large self-funded employer and basically gave those employees the option to select a direct primary care provider and had that provider managing the care. And it did not show the inflationary pressures that might exist. A number of the reasons that have been articulated about why physicians go into direct primary care arrangements are probably quite valid. The flexibility they have, the avoiding the administrative requirements. And I think that finding alone would suggest that further research is appropriate. But more importantly, insurance companies should look at the arrangements they have with primary care providers. Are they overburdening them? Is the expectation to see number of patients too high? Are these management structures actually creating greater costs for their population? I mean, you could see this as a competitive area. Shouldn't the insurance company, if it's going to look at their competitive position in the market, say, well, how can we improve what we have with primary care providers, lower the cost overall? The model with primary care has changed a lot over the years. And indeed, in the past, there have been even primary care capitation arrangements. So pay that primary care, that in-network primary care provider, a monthly fee for managing the patient care. So it's worth at least acknowledging that there have been some explorations in terms of how to best manage the relationship with the primary care provider. But indeed, I think we are a long ways from any real solution at this point. There is a provision that ended up in the amendment about the insurance department reviewing up to 10 of these contracts. These are contracts between the direct primary care provider and the member to ensure that they are compliant with the requirement that is in the physician licensing law. This is a strange place for the insurance department to be, but I think I know where it came from. There was a direct primary care study committee, and a big part of the interest of that committee was keeping track of what was going on with direct primary care practices. And the insurance department was asked about some sort of certification. And we said it wasn't our preference at the time. We do feel as though the way the bill is amended, we could probably do it within existing resources. That being said, it's going to be a compliance review, not an in-depth legal analysis about whether or not the member's contract meets the standard. So I just kind of note that out there. I think the other thing that's in there is that report on the impact of the legislation in 2025. Similarly, we could probably do that report within existing resources. And it might be an interesting analysis at that point. So just to summarize, it does represent some significant changes to the way products and benefits are managed. There are some cost concerns because that relationship between a carrier and a primary care provider should lead to the most cost-effective treatment. But I think you've heard some what are potentially valid concerns about how things have developed over the years. I do want to say briefly about part 2 on the bill, and I raised these concerns, and this is the PBM requirement. I raised these concerns in the Senate. The way New Hampshire insurance laws are structured, most of the time PBMs are subject to insurance laws as a contractor with the insurance company. So put in a prescription drug requirement for insurance companies, the PBM is also bound by that requirement. A few years ago, maybe only 2, legislation passed creating a PBM specific chapter. So the definition of a PBM for that chapter is a PBM that does work for multiple carriers. So you could have a PBM that does work just for one insurance company, and they're not included in the PBM chapter requirements. Today, those requirements are basically the same. Doesn't matter if you're a PBM serving one insurance company or multiple insurance companies. But this new provision, although relatively minimal, would just apply to PBMs that are servicing multiple insurance companies, unless you also put the exact same requirement in the insurance chapter. So for insurance carriers, and I have language. So if you want to proceed with the legislation, or at least part 2, and you don't want to create a different standard on that based on that dynamic, you may wish to amend the bill that way. So I'll stop there, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Great. Any questions from the committee members? Thank you very much, and we appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
Okay, I have one more name signed up, and then I have Andrew Osmer wants to weigh in, and Dr. Krupp, I promised, would speak again. So Rick Newman. Rick, you want to raise your hand and pop up to the top for me? Okay, there you go. Promote the panelists. Okay, Rick, you just have to unmute yourself.
Got it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, my name is Rick Newman, and I am representing the New Hampshire Independent Pharmacy Association. I assure you I'll be very brief. Would like to speak to part 2 of the bill that is, I believe, very simple. It simply prohibits a PBM or adds to the prohibited acts for PBMs. They cannot stop retail pharmacies from mailing a prescription to a patient. We've discovered this to be a problem. There are patients that for various reasons want to use a retail pharmacy and may at times, not always, but may at times need the service of having a prescription mailed, and are willing to pay a fee to have it mailed. And but there are some PBMs that then will tell the retail pharmacy they will not get reimbursed for that prescription. This change will stop that practice, allow the occasional mailing by a retail pharmacy to a patient. And I would just say that the comments of the insurance department, we agree with. If they feel it needs to be added to another section, duplicate language, which often is the case, we certainly have no problem with that. And I would just, it appears from listening that part 1 may have some controversy. I don't really believe part 2 does. So I would hope the committee would look favorably on part 2. And if that means, you know, finding another home for it, should some other action be taken regarding part 1, we would certainly urge you to do that. I'm happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Evidently, we do have a question. Representative Abramson has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for taking my question. Just to be clear, you're speaking in favor of part 2 and you'd like to keep part 2 in the bill.
That is correct. Part 2.
All right. Thank you very much.
Right. Any more questions? Are all set? Okay. And former Senator Hosmer, you want to weigh in?
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman, and I will be brief. Certainly, good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Andrew Hosmer. I represent Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, which is, as you know, the largest nonprofit insurer in New Hampshire. I am testifying on their behalf as opposed to Section 1 of SB 97. Certainly, Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare is, our focus is quality care for all our members, and we're certainly willing and anxious to collaborate with all the stakeholders in discussing direct primary care. Just the concerns that we have here, and I don't want to be redundant because I think Ms. Kroll and Ms. Dunlap and certainly Tyler Brannon raised all the relevant points that I had hoped to. But our healthcare delivery networks have been created to ensure coordination of care and patient safety, with the PCP at the center or as a gatekeeper, as it was testified to earlier. What we have found is that this leads to lower costs as members are receiving the right care in the right setting. So we don't stand here pushing back against innovative ideas when it comes to healthcare. All I'd ask the committee to consider right now is that there are plenty of opportunities for improvement in our healthcare delivery networks or our healthcare delivery system. But I think the networks have been created to make sure there's quality care delivered to members and make sure that there are some cost controls in place. And it's a delicate balance to manage. So before we go forward and start pilot programs and expand the how we're going to treat direct primary care providers and their referrals, I think really we should take a step back and slow down and look at the impacts, particularly potential cost increases that the Department of Insurance has indicated may occur. So with that, I will conclude my testimony. If you have questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
I think the committee members are hungry. So I think we're all set. All right, thank you very much. So Dr. Kropp, we'll let you have the last word.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. I appreciate Dr. Brannon clarifying a lot of the earlier questions I had. I just want to make sure that in this discussion that people don't lose sight of the patient in this equation. In any business, quality and value are measured from the customer perspective, and that's what the patients are. We need to make sure that we're taking care of them. And you know, you talk about things that are confusing. Health insurance reading your benefits from health insurance can be pretty confusing. And I think it's a little disingenuous to say that DPC is not affordable when my patients are paying $14,000 a year as a healthy 60-year-old woman for her insurance and having a $10,000 deductible. That's pretty unaffordable. And what we're trying to do in this is look outside the box, get out of that belief that the large healthcare organizations and the insurance companies and everybody knows how to do this and how to make this work for patients. Well, you start by asking the patients. And when my patients sign a contract directly with me and I say, this is what I'm going to provide for you, and they continue to be my patient, that's their indication that this is a good quality care. And so I hope that people, just keep in mind, hey, how do we make patients, how do we help them get better quality care, and simplify things and not drive them away, not treat them like numbers, reduce that problem that we have in this country of using specialty care instead of primary care, all those very expensive parts of this. Primary care doctors are paid the least, our expenses and our costs in healthcare are the least of any other segment. And I think that this really could help kind of shift that, whether it's for 5 doctors in this state or 500 patients or whatever the case may be. I think this is important for those individuals. And I really appreciate your time, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak one more time. Thank you very much, Representative Hunt.
Yeah. All right. Seeing no more hands up, and I think we're all set. So this bill had 20 people in support, 2 opposed, and 2 neutral. And I will close the public hearing on Senate Bill 97. And so otherwise for the committee, we'll meet again next Tuesday at 9, and I have not scheduled anything for Wednesday. And then the following week, obviously is the
No week.
Bedford, so no, I did not schedule anything for Tuesday. So other than that, we're all set. We are adjourned.